appointments. Jennifer Day. Ed, can you give us a little update, please?
Yes, I would like to recommend to the board that the board do an emergency appointment for an interim treasurer-collector of Jennifer Day up until May 15th, when the election will occur and someone will be elected to the collector-treasurer's office. Ms. Day actually sent a cover letter and resume, which you have. She had previously worked in our collector-treasurer's office as the assistant collector-treasurer. So she seems very capable, very anxious. She could start, if you wanted to, as early as next week. But I think she'll do a good job for us in the interim.
Ed, is there any certification or anything? She mentioned, I think, in the cover letter that she was eligible for a particular distinction come a few months out. Is that going to negatively affect us in any way?
No, it will not. It's A+, but it's not a requirement. And actually, the certification for the combined collector-treasurer position actually can take up to 6 years because it's 2 separate certifications.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe she's the one that's running for the position.
She is on the ballot.
I know that she is a candidate for the position.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think she's the only candidate.
Okay.
And I think it's going to be a little strange because she's going to start off at a pay a little bit higher, and then I think we reduce this position in the preliminary budget. So then at the election, their pay will go down to the new number, I believe.
Right.
If that holds.
I think,
The non-override budget, I think we could.
right.
That,
So if the override passes, it's at the same.
Then it'll be the same.
Yes.
Okay.
And actually, Vicki checked with DOR today, and since it's elected a position, and even though the person isn't elected to it this time, since we set the rate of pay at the annual town meeting, that is the rate of pay that this person would be required to get as an interim.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Do I hear a motion to appoint her until May 15th?
I'll appoint Jennifer Day as the interim treasurer-collector until May 15th.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So moved.
Thank you very much.
Now, we have no hearings. Selectmen's report. Does the board have anything they want to bring forward?
Nope.
Okay, Jim?
Down in a moment.
Okay. Town administrators report.
Certainly, and first up, we have someone who is volunteering to organize the Memorial Day Parade, and I have a letter from Mr. Leclerc, Board of Selectmen, Southampton, Mass.
Here he is.
Yes.
Why, there he shall be.
Having informed the town clerk of our intent, we were informed that we should ask permission of the board to organize the Memorial Day Parade for this year. We have not heard of any other person or group who desires to be involved, and it is time for the necessary details to be in place. Any persons who may want to help with this activity are welcome and could thus begin to learn what is involved. Your American Legion is willing to share this activity with any or all who choose to help. So sincerely, Richard Leclerc, past commander. And Mr. Leclerc is here.
My name is Richard Leclerc. I live at 55 Strong Road. I'm the past commander of the American Legion. We've done this before. About 5 years ago, I was up here to step down. Now, I haven't heard of anybody stepping up with a committee, and I've been asked by several members of the community to do this. So, myself and my wife are willing to get started, and it takes a few weeks to get everything rolling again. So, I'm requesting your permission to do this.
I hear a motion.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it. Absolutely.
Any discussion?
I think at the last time when we talked about this, there was somebody who had offered to also help. And she could very well be in the next meeting next door, but I can certainly give you her name.
We need all the help we can get.
I'm
Okay.
sure knowing him, he will just
Yeah.
grab anybody he can get hold of, so. Motion's on table. Do I hear yes?
Yep. Aye.
Aye.
All in favor? Thank you.
Thank you
If
very
need
much.
something from us or me, please feel free.
We will come back and check with you. Thank you so very much for the opportunity to do this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See, the Franklin Regional Transit Authority, FRTA, has sent us some information that they will be looking at fare increases as of July 1st, and they will start charging a minimum fee for PCAs and escorts, which they have not done in the past. They will be holding several public outreach sessions to obtain feedback on these proposed changes, and I've attached a flyer of those public outreach sessions, which is attached to my report. I intend to attend one of them before the May meeting where they'll be voting on this. And as you were aware, you appointed me as our representative to the FRTA.
Yes.
The request for quotes for the appraisal services for the easements required on the Glendale Road project are back, and the contract has been awarded to O'Connor Real Estate Associates, Inc. of Westfield as providing the lowest quote. Letters have been mailed to the property owners who have not previously donated their temporary or permanent easements to the town, which notifies them that they will be contacted by someone from O'Connor Real Estate Associates regarding the appraisal of their easement. The appraisals are due back to us by April 27th. And O'Connor is the firm that was used for the easements for the safe route to schools also.
Oh, okay.
How many appraisals are you looking at?
Oh, God, now ask me a tough question.
12?
I believe it's, because I think there was there was 14, they do it by the parcels. So if you've got a temporary and permanent or two temporaries on your parcel, that's one appraisal. So originally when we sent it out, there was 14. I believe we are down to 12 now because we've had 2 more donations since the time it went out.
That's good.
Good.
Yeah.
That works.
Yes.
Okay. Time frame look okay with the Commonwealth relative to DOT?
Actually, Karen was looking to see if they could extend the bid date for this project, since because she knew we were going to be tight on the appraisals. She had not heard back, but she sent me an email today, because I had given her an update that O'Connor had started, and she said that they will adjust the bid date and the advertisement of it outwards, so we'll be okay.
I want to say thank you, because prior to hiring you, DOT was chasing me all the time for all this stuff, like the safe routes for school. This is getting more and more refreshing as time goes on.
I can't believe the number of people that are now chasing me rather
Yeah,
than
I
you,
know.
so I can appreciate that.
Quite the change there.
Charlie was easier to catch.
Yeah, I'm a little more elusive. Velda protects me. Just a reminder that the open forum on Chapter 61 lands is tomorrow evening, April 5th at 6 p.m. at the Norris School Cafeteria Gymnasium. And also just a reminder, I know in addition to having this at some of our past meetings, that Worthington did send out another email this week, and they are looking to for notifications, so it can be included in their 250th anniversary book of if we are going to participate in their parade. And I know Maureen did respond to that, so another gentle reminder. I think it's Saturday the 30th of June. I have drafted 2 different letters for the 2 parcels the Select Board requested concerning Chapter 61 lands, and a reminder of the town's right of first refusal, and one requesting a copy of the purchase and sale agreement when the town has evidence that there may be intent to remove the property from Chapter 61. They are attached to my report for your review. If you would like any changes to them, please let me know. I will change them, and then if you want them to go out under my name and my letterhead, I can do that. If you want it to go out under the Board of Selectmen's letterhead, I can put it on that and have the board sign it.
Any preference?
I'll give you a 30-second update.
They're talking about the letters that went out to the landowners regarding the Chapter 61 lands, and they're attached to the town administrator report. Well, I was just looking at the way the letters were addressed. It says, "The town of Southampton would like to reach out and remind you." So, I don't know if you feel that's you or the select board. Doesn't really particularly matter to me, but I feel like maybe it should be the select board.
And the
I'm
problem,
fine either way, though.
the one thing I would change on these two, I've got, I refer to it as agricultural land. Technically, both of these parcels are forestry rather than agricultural recreation, so I would change my reference to agricultural to forestry.
I'm okay with the TA sending it out. If that's your question.
That's my question. Brady?
Right now, it says, "Please notify the chair, the Board of Selectmen chairman," and then it says, "Please send off to the," it says, oh, one of them says Charlie, one of them says you, right?
Yes,
Oh, okay.
and we can change that around any way you'd like.
Yeah, okay. I'm fine either way.
How about we have the TA sign both of them, and anybody responds to the TA,
Okay, sure.
all right?
I'm fine.
Okay, and that, I don't think we need a motion for that, do we?
We already made a motion for that.
Yep.
Yeah, so,
Okay, so you want them
both out of you?
both responding to me rather than one to you and one to me?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, that seemed kind of,
Well, only because of the fact, technically, if someone is going to give the town, or offer the town the right of first refusal, one of the required boards is the Board of Selectmen, so that's why I did that one. And then on the one that we're asking for the purchase and sale, I said, nah, that one can come to me and I can act as your agent.
yeah,
Sounds
good to
they're
me.
agent under both, so,
Okay.
okay,
All
very
right.
good.
I will have them both come back to me. Let's see, the next Board of Selectmen's meeting will be Tuesday, April 17th. The May Select Board meeting dates are to be determined, and I will remind the board that probably the first regularly scheduled one of the month would be on May 1st, which is annual town meeting, so that will skew that a little bit.
Now, my understanding is, we were originally scheduling a meeting for April 24th.
Well, no, that was kind of, shall we say, a mix-up in my office. We were trying to schedule a dog hearing, and for whatever reason, with the craziness that's been going on recently, Velda and I thought our next regularly scheduled meeting was the 24th rather than the 17th, so the notice went out for the 24th.
So if we do our meeting on the 17th, our next meeting is going to be May 8th.
It's a long stretch, though.
May 1st,
May 1st is town meeting.
Right.
so
Right.
That's why I was looking at the 24th.
Yeah, that would be the 8th, unless there's a need to have one before then.
We either,
I can't do the 24th if that's what you're looking
I
at.
can't do the 24th either.
well, then, it's a moot point.
Yeah.
Okay. Then our next meeting is for there'll be a short selectmen's meeting May 1st before town meeting.
Yeah.
For anything that has to be addressed.
Mhm.
And then we'll have a regular selectmen's meeting May 8th. How's
Ju-
that sound?
But just a thought, depending on what happens at town meeting, do we want to schedule one for May 2nd, which is a Wednesday? Because there may be issues we want to address.
Well, we can do it on the 8th.
if you want to wait a week plus. It's just budget issues, you know.
It'll
Wait,
be what it is, though,
yeah,
then it's,
unless something gets changed on the floor,
but it still
yeah.
becomes a town meeting vote that's changed on the floor. There's not much we can do.
If we end up posting one, we can always post it later.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
Or if town meeting goes to a second night, then it goes to the Wednesday, which is the second.
Robert's been
Also.
very good at not doing second nights. I don't know if
Yeah.
he's gonna break that, but he's been very good at it.
So,
And how about a second meeting date in the month of May?
22nd?
Yeah. We don't wanna do the 15th, that's the election. So, 22nd?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then there's a department heads meeting tomorrow at 10 a.m.
Okay.
And that's it for my report.
Very good. I would like to take a couple of things out of order, just because I'm not sure if people are here or not. So let's jump to signatures, personnel change forms, PCF.
I don't know that we have that, but I have it electronically.
Should be in your packets.
It's supposed to be page
Okay.
11.
I've got the original for signature.
You want to read it, Ed, if you have it handy.
It is for Sarah Nadolski, and it is for a on-call dispatcher, replacing Nathan Scheffler.
And that's,
The hourly rate would be $15.31. And it's as needed.
mhm. And
This
that's,
varies between, and it's what's that? Oh,
Yeah, due to,
vary,
varies based due to part-time status.
all right, I couldn't read the
Yeah.
rest.
that's been signed off by the department head, personnel board, finance committee,
Accountant,
accountant.
yeah.
Looks like it.
Do I hear a motion to approve?
So move.
Second?
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Okay, let's jump to the license and permits. One-day beer and wine license permit, Conant Park for May 20th. It's a party from 1 PM to 8 PM. I assume your office has reviewed everything, Ed?
Yes, we have, everything's in place. They have a receipt for the use of Conant Park, and the police chief has been contacted, and he is all right with this.
Do I hear a motion to approve?
So move.
Second?
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Now I'm going to jump back to comprehensive emergency management plan. I've been working on this for the last 6+ months. I've been copying the board and all the different town agencies and departments on this. We've reached a point where all the department heads have signed off on it. We need the approval of this board so that we, or me, as the emergency manager, can submit this to MEMA, Emergency Management, Magawam, as our agreement. You want to make a motion, then we'll do discussion on it?
Okay, I'll make the motion for discussion.
There's a second.
Second.
Any questions?
Yeah, Charlie, I'm just wondering if you can give us a overview of what the public needs to know about it.
This is in simple form, even though as you can see, it's not simple. It's basically the plan that Southampton has on how it would deal with major emergency situations in the town. It basically outlines everything from floods to ice storms to plagues. It is to give the Commonwealth a feel as to what we have for resources and what our limits are. It's a living document in the sense that this part of the document is pretty much open and public. There are other sections of the document that list things that are in town that are not public record. We need to do this so that we're in good standing with the Commonwealth. If we're in good standing with the Commonwealth, we become in good standing with FEMA. If there is a declaration that is basically declared in town because of something, we become eligible for any federal or state funding or assistance that's necessary to maintain our community. That's it in a quick summary. I mean, it talks about everything here from bridges collapsing to dams breaking to disease outbreak. It's pretty extensive, and it has a protocol of who's in charge and what their roles and responsibilities are in the different town divisions. Believe it or not, there's actually a part here that includes the librarian. And she's laughing, going, oh no. But it's there, because that's a town asset, and it could be used in case there was an emergency. So I guess that summarizes it.
So we never had one of these in place, this is brand new?
My understanding is the latest one we had was in 2003. When the board appointed me as the emergency manager, I started to put all this stuff back where it should be. This document has changed over time with the state and the federal government. It's now more electronic. And it's, like I said, it's a living document. It keeps changing because people change jobs, positions, phone numbers change, situations change in the community. So it'll always be getting expanded on. But yeah, we were outdated by 2003 versus 2018. So
I
we're playing
remember
catch-up.
when parts of this were done in the past. It was around the time, I think, of the H1N1. We had mock drills. We had a walkthrough of Norris and all of that. So just a couple of questions. One is, it is a living document, and a lot of times things change very quickly in terms of people, places, and so is there a plan for like a quarterly meeting or a every 6-month meeting for updating it?
The updating should be occurring as they occur, if notified, if people tell me this is
Okay.
happening. But there's an overall review every year. It's still a small town, it's not like it's a big city, so
Yeah.
a yearly review should be fine for a community this size. I mean, it's just like, we just were awarded a $60,000 grant from the state. We're putting an emergency generator onto this building. That's part of this plan. This continuity of operation for the government requires that we have power here. So that is part of this, which was missing before. There needs to be some MOUs put together for agreements relative to restaurants in town for food supplies, the church for sheltering stuff. There's a lot of work to be done here that is not here yet. I've tried to get the core material done so that we're on record with the Commonwealth.
Does the completion of this or the approval of this put us in a better position to get grants such as like a public safety complex?
I don't believe that signing this is going to inline us for a grant for a public safety complex, if you want my honest opinion. But it does put us in position, sort of like the emergency generator for this town hall. It will help down the road, and part of the problem when you ask about these grants, that's all soft money. You never know what the federal government is going to be putting in the next 6 months or a year as available funding for things like a public safety complex. But if somebody puts in the criteria, you must have a comprehensive plan that's approved, yeah, it'll help. It's not gonna hurt us, let's put it that way.
Yeah. Can I ask a general question? If there was an emergency, not a water main break, which we've had recently, but if there was a
I don't wanna hear about water main breaks.
there was a high-level emergency in this town, what can the public expect?
The primary communications with this town is our, basically code red our reverse 911 system. What you would find happening is, you would find that we would be basically calling together in our emergency operation plan all the department heads that we feel are necessary to take and work on what that emergency is.
Mhm.
And there would be a PI, Public Information Officer, that would be out to explain to the public what's going on.
Mhm.
The problem when you say an emergency is, it all depends on what we're talking about an emergency. If we're talking about a virus, we're looking at the Board of Health taking the lead.
Right.
But if we're looking at the fact that there's a major fire out in the west part, it'll be the fire department out there.
Right, but the public will know about it because of the Code Red program. They'll get a phone call, email,
That's
and
our
and they'll be
first,
directed to what to do.
that's our first line.
And that's one of the reasons we didn't want to use it for water breaks and all that. We wanted to leave it just for
Right.
emergencies.
That was the argument I kept making to everyone about the fact that we don't want to use Code Red to take and let somebody know that a water line broke on East Street, because the entire town may or may not be affected, but it's not an emergency at that point. This is for legitimate, you know, we're sending out an alert because of the fact that there's a fuel truck that's rolled over in the center of town, and we have to evacuate a half-mile radius of that. You won't get scared
Yeah.
there.
Mhm.
Now, I understand that it probably won't help with a grant for a safety complex. Would this being updated have helped us on the October storm we had, the ice storm we had, where we were supposed to be getting in some funding to help us?
That would
this
have,
helped with that?
yes, because this actually has the plan of how to take and put your ICS together, how to do your accounting, who's responsible in town, and it puts your paperwork in order at the time of the emergency, so when you submit for reimbursement to the state and the federal government, you should have everything online.
That would have been nice. It was a big bill.
It's baby steps, we're learning the ropes, I mean, you know, my background was basically the state district health officer. I was assigned to go to every disaster in this part of the state for years. And there were times where I would go to disaster in Western Mass every 60 days. And that included everything like cemeteries that became mudslides that went into the town, to the Connecticut River flooding wastewater treatment plants, which then flooded athletic fields, to trailer homes where we had to condemn over 50, to tornadoes that went through certain sections where we were dealing with many displaced people. But enough said. On that cheery note, do I hear a motion to accept this?
We already gave a, we
We
already
already
had
have
the
the
motion.
motion in a
Well, I
second.
lost that.
Well, I just want to say,
Discussion.
Charlie, I just want to add thank you, because obviously this has been signed off by all the department heads, and it was a lot to pull this together, so thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome. All in favor?
Aye.
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 So moved. So someone has the originals.
Yes, I do. They're coming down.
It will be nice to get this sort of quasi off my desk.
Somebody said where you were, so.
Everyone
Sign it.
signs where I sign,
Sign this below.
you know. There you are. He stole my pen. Make note of that.
I've got one.
You like that pen? You got one more to steal from me?
No, that was mine, you got.
Yeah, no, it's not the quality I'm accustomed to.
There you go, you need to sign it.
All right, that takes care of a lot of the loose ends on this.
Thanks.
There, you gotta sign that one too, Charlie.
Oh, yeah. This also puts a lot of responsibility on our town administrator.
What else is new?
The kicker is, he's stuck there with me. It's like a bad penny, just keeps showing up, following him around. When he was the mayor of West Springfield and he had the tornado, Who showed up at his door? Me. Okay. Now going to open the board's discussion of the FY 2019 budget, operating capital, and Prop 2.5 override. This is a closed discussion between the Board of Selectmen, the town administrator, and the town accountant. We spent over 5 hours at our last meeting opening the floor to all the different committees and boards and to the general public to basically express their concerns. But at this point in time, we have to get this ready and finalized, I believe, tonight, so we can move this forward for the town meeting and the election. So with that, I'm opening this up to the board and the town accountant and the town administrator.
Well, Charlie, could I ask for 5 minutes or less? I would like to make a little presentation, or I discuss something with the board.
Certainly.
All right.
Board okay with that?
I'm fine, yeah.
Okay.
I've been on the board for about 2 years now. This has got to be the most difficult thing I had to do, cutting this budget. Trying to come up with a budget, if the override doesn't pass, is devastating for this town. If there's a glimmer of hope, I'm trying to give it to the board. So what I did is I have lottery tickets. Now, this is $200,000 a year for life. This is totally for the town. If we luck out, there's 4 of them, 1 for each member of the board. If for some reason we hit this, this is going to solve a little bit of our problem. So, pass that down.
To come to this.
Come to this.
So take a minute
And
I
scratch.
don't think we should stretch off an executive session because then you don't know what can happen.
Hey, Jim, do you have a coin too?
I'm all out. I spent
Yeah.
I can't believe
I
I'm
know.
letting this happen.
Well, by the way, if we say, no, didn't win,
watching close. Well, good luck.
For those of you on television watching this, I want you to
Hey.
know,
This is how severe this is.
hey, Robert, before I do this, does this have anything to do with the ethics and $50 gifts? So you're giving this to us personally?
This is
Perceived value.
the total value is less than $50 for these tickets, by the way. That
Okay, 1 down, sorry.
all right, here it goes.
This will be the one time I hit it, you know?
I hope that'd be great. Nothing.
So what do we have to do?
what do you mean, what do you have to, you can't,
2x, 5x, 10x? I'm not a lottery ticket buyer, so.
I usually don't.
oh, man.
Oh boy, I'm not looking very good here.
So how am I supposed to walk out of here with this ticket without somebody questioning what I did?
23, 11. I didn't even win $1. Maybe we want to verify it. Bummer. Whatever. It was worth a shot. I mean, if it hit, that would have been an exciting moment.
Hey, Jim, do you have a plan B?
Lucy, would you come up here and verify this ticket for me? No.
Do you win something?
That's why the TV camera's here.
Did you win? Hey, he probably did. How much did he win?
It's a start.
That goes to the town. That was close.
I gotta tell you, if it had like $1,000 on it, I was gonna sit there going, now, how are we doing this? How are we going to the lottery to get this?
Still waiting on John.
John has a hard time with,
Don't scratch the void for those.
Yeah, don't scratch the void thing, John.
I just like suspense.
You mean we don't have enough around here?
We have suspense, we have
Touche.
drama, we have mystery, it's all rolled into one thing here.
Come on, John,
Kind of a
you're our last
reality show
hope.
we get people up
Yeah,
for.
well, that ain't gonna work. No, that's nothing there at all. Don't worry about it. Nope. Thank you anyways, Jim.
All right.
Ed, would you mind just starting and explaining all the colors?
The colors I can't, Vicky will have to,
Okay,
Those are kind of for my own
okay,
reference and what I changed, when I changed them, so.
okay.
want a colored one?
Is there anything different from what we ended up with last time? Yes, because you'd reduce the additional 34,000, right?
And the override budget, only changes were made is what the board voted to change at the last meeting. The non-override passage scenario, which is the one on the far right, was still $34,000 short, if you
right.
remember at the last meeting. So Vicky and I, and these are, again, just general ideas, but we're getting towards the end of the ideas. There's no silver bullets out there. So the changes that were made to the non-override budget scenario, or the budget scenario if the override doesn't pass, is the assessor's administrative assistant has been reduced by $10,000, which
Those
was,
are the hot pink
it's-
ones, by the way. What he's talking about now
Yeah.
is the one that's.
Thank you.
postage has been reduced by $3,000. EMS expenses were reduced by $5,000 on somewhat the theory if we've already reduced the third and second shifts of the ambulance, that probably we wouldn't need as much in medical supplies. Police department expenses, there was $3,000 that has been reduced from additional from the building expenses, and $2,000 from the police department expenses. Group retiree health insurance was reduced by $6,000. Emergency management director expense was reduced by $1,000, which takes it down to zero. The telephone account was reduced by $54. Street lighting was reduced by an additional, well, I won't say additional, but by $1,000. Unemployment was reduced by $1,500, and health insurance active was reduced by $1,500. The total of those reductions is $34,054, which makes the non-override budget now equal the revenues. Now, and Vicki and I kind of looked at it, and after these suggestions or recommendations, we could go back in and take a look at the various expense accounts, but we end up taking $100 here, $100 there. There's not much left to really reduce as far as those go. Could look to further reduce administrative assistant hours, which have already been reduced 5 hours a week, or one of the thoughts in one of the early discussions after the last meeting was, do we eliminate all the administrative assistant positions, and that no department would have an administrative assistant?
How much would that save us?
Vicki Morrow, Town Accountant, Pomeroy Meadow Road. So the only person left in the non-override budget with an administrative assistant, if we were to take away the $10,000 from the assessor, which really isn't necessarily to hire somebody, but to per diem pay someone in case, the assessor needed some help in there, would be the highway department. And that would be $13,687. Because we weren't gonna refill Velda's position, which is the administrative assistant to the town administrator, and the police and fire don't have one. All the other people that work in this building, are assistants. Like, I have an assistant town accountant, we have an assistant treasurer collector, we have an assistant town clerk. So they're not admin assistants, they're assistants to the department head. So there's a little designation difference there, so.
Okay. So I just wanted to mention a couple things. And before I do that, I want to make it perfectly clear that I totally support the override budget. I realize that these are people's jobs, but I just have a couple comments. We ended up spending a lot of time and energy and money to hire a town administrator, and including hiring the Collins Center, having a subcommittee, and now we have a town administrator who comes very well qualified. I think it would be disastrous to not have that person have any assistant administrator positions. There are letters to be typed. There's a lot of work that has to be done, and I just feel like we're going to run into trouble with not having some level of assistance in that office. I also think that there are certain departments have been hit particularly hard. Assessors had a principal assessor, assistant assessor, and assistant administrator. They lost their principal assessor. The assistant became their principal assessor. If they cut the assistant administrator or assistant down, they will have one person in the department. I think that department got hit particularly hard. I think there are some departments that have had no cuts whatsoever. Building inspector, accountant, treasurer, and health. And I'm not suggesting that this happen. I'm just concerned about the town administrator office and the accountant and the assessor's office.
Do you have any recommendations on the ones that didn't get hit?
No, I just wanted to just mention that I think there are unfairly cuts, and I think that, I know this is a very busy time for Ed. He's here night and day to get this all done. And I think that there's letters to be written. He wrote the 2 today, to going out to the Chapter 61 property owners. I just feel like to not have any hours in there for letters and all kinds of things would be a mistake, given all the time and energy we've tried to have a consistent town administrator in this town.
Well, I sat back and looked at this budget since the last meeting. It was put in front of us shortly before the meeting, so we didn't have a lot of time to digest it. I felt the board did a great job. We went through it, and it seemed like we weren't exactly consistent from the beginning to the end. We varied on a lot of things. But sitting back and looking at what we did, and I am really worried about the safety of this town. I think the fire department ambulance, to me, that was just decimated. That we had a trailer there, we have a brand new ambulance coming, and now we have no staff. We have no standby. We're going back a lot of years on that. So if I was to sit back and look at this and say, what's important to this town, I think public safety ought to be at the top of the list. Police and fire, we ought to look at them. And then work the list from there. But those are the top 2. And having that ambulance, pretty much, if the override doesn't go through, it's pretty much done. I think I have a problem with that, and I would like to revisit that if the board would like to entertain.
I was gonna say something about that myself, and I know you said it's just for the select board, Charlie, but Chief Workman's here. Do you mind if we bring him up and?
If I open it up to Chief Workman, then I'm opening it up to everyone. We spent over 5 hours going through this the last selectmen's meeting.
Granted?
I'm trying to make this now that we have to make decisions. We've had over a week to hear from the chief. I have nothing against the chief. The chief and I get together and have lunch together and all the rest of that, but the point is still the same. I open it up for him, then I'm obligated to open up for everyone else.
You're only obligated if somebody on the board wants a clarification, I think.
You haven't asked for any clarification?
I'm asking for Chief Workman to be there so I can ask him a question to clarify.
Chief?
You're right, you don't want to open up just everybody, but on these 2 budget cuts, on the fire department wages, there's 50,000 less on the non-override budget, and on the EMT non-override, there's 50,000. On the override budget, we have 3 shifts as the town approved. On the second shift, we have 2 EMTs, or
Correct.
EMT and a paramedic. And
EMT and a paramedic,
and on the third, we have
just a paramedic,
1 paramedic.
correct.
So that's 24. So
Yep.
if this 50,000 from the fire and 50,000 from the EMT wages went through, what would that do?
In some ways, it's difficult to say it decimates the fire department, I think is probably the best way to say that.
We had just made state mandates to staffing levels this year. It would be a giant step backwards to lose that. What the state had done last was to say that if we didn't do it, they were going to take away our paramedic. The assumption can only be that they would try and take away the paramedic licensure from Southampton. That could potentially lose us $100,000 in revenue just from doing that.
Would that set up the intercept in other towns?
Yeah, and it may have to be that you would have to pay another town to actually cover. It may not be cheaper to actually cut us back to below where we were before.
I guess my point, more importantly, is that interceptor not having the paramedic at your house when it's needed could be a life-threatening condition. And at different town meetings, we've had those. People get up and speak about that. 5 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes when you're having a heart attack or whatever. It could be literally life and death.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I agree with Jim that we need to look at the fire department, police department, the safety part, but how are we gonna do that? You know, we need some suggestions, and I hate to say, I agree that all the departments should be funded, but we've gotta prioritize, and it's gonna be a tough one.
Yeah, and it does feel a little bit like, you know, for this, the public safety, fire department is the smallest and got hit the hardest. That's a challenge.
And, yeah, I think that's one of our concerns, especially since the town said, we want this additional service at the last town meeting. It took us a while to get it to that level, getting the licensure
That's
ready and going.
correct. Yeah, it's been a lot of work.
Okay, thanks.
And the other thing that bothers me with that is, I can't give you an exact dollar amount, but we're cutting an area that actually generates revenue.
Right.
So that's gonna be affected. So let's say, the ambulance roughly brings in, I think Vicki can confirm it, 200,000 a year.
With the three, you know,
Three shifts?
Three shifts, 200,000 a year. So we cut back 2/3 of that, what's that gonna do to that budget? So we're getting double whammy on what we're cutting that budget, we're gonna lose the revenue on the other side as well.
Yeah.
So for every dollar we save by cutting it from you, we're actually gonna lose two. Or
Yeah.
we're gonna lose one.
Well, it's the double-edged sword.
Yes.
The revenue part and the safety part. So,
Which means the general fund, even if you have the one shift, will have to fund more of your ambulance because you will not have enough ambulance receipts to take away to fund what's even a one shift at the fire secretary.
okay, so we need to, I mean, I think we need to look at this here.
Yeah, it's a big amount.
Right.
Yeah.
And
How
the
do you
other
make up that kind of money?
The
Well-
other thing I was thinking too, is we just are transitioning to the third shift recently. Not, it hasn't been in place very long. So I was hoping that maybe the revenue projection may go up a little above 200. It's hard to tell at this point.
Yeah.
It's one of those things you try and you see where it comes out. But I feel so strong that this is so important to the town's safety. Having somebody there within minutes and, seconds will make a difference of life or death, I believe.
And we just,
So
Absolutely.
if we had to, this is an emergency, I would say we should consider stabilization to fund it if we had to for this year. And let's see where the full service starts bringing in, or how else can we fund it? It would give us time, but it takes so long to build it up, and to end it, it's gonna take so long to recover from that again. I just think that's ridiculous, so we should consider all options.
how much is in Chief, we don't want to keep you standing there.
No,
Thank you. Yeah.
if I can help.
Vicki, can you also say what the interest on stabilization has been this past year?
I have no idea. You'd have to ask the treasurer. Oh, well, I mean, I can tell you what we received, but I don't know what the interest rate is, I guess.
No, I'm not
Oh,
looking
oh.
for the amount that we
Oh, the amount.
we had in interest.
I say I don't know what the interest rate is, but she does, so right now in operating stabilization, there's $371,628.53. And so far,
There, the articles,
Huh?
Yes,
we have articles that are going to
Yes.
draw from this. so
I think we do, so.
we do.
We got to be careful.
One of them is the boiler for the school.
Right.
There's the boiler for 50,000, the server for 7,500, and the assessor software for 15,000.
So we're down to like 3,000,
300,
300,000.
yeah, okay.
So in operating year-to-date through the middle of March, there's $593 we collected in interest.
So not a
off
lot.
that $370 some odd thousand, so.
Not much, yeah. Okay, so can we use the operating stabilization fund for this purpose to make whole the fire department?
You can use stabilization funds per state statute for any lawful purpose.
Okay, how would we need to do that? Do we need to have it go through the board or through a town meeting?
You have to have it go through the town. Anything coming out of stabilization, in or out, has to be voted at a town meeting.
So we need to
Coming
put
out needs 2/3 votes.
Warrant on the warrant article.
Yes, you need a warrant article to do that,
And
correct?
last day for a warrant article is it? It is today?
I believe so.
If we approve a warrant
Thought it was
article,
a
would
week
that
in
be
advance.
enough time to have it be in front of the
Is
This would be
town?
part of the budget.
The moderator can tell us, I think, a more exact date, if he has it.
You could decide next week. if you
I
like
know,
to.
but we don't have a meeting scheduled, and I have to reschedule that. That's why I'm saying tonight's the night that we really need to nail this down.
I mean, personally, I have no issue with meeting sometime next week, if that's what it takes.
Now comes the other question. What type of money are you looking to plug into that article?
I mean, personally, and you folks, I would take 50, now, on the fire department wages and on the EMT wages, both of those factor into the 3 shifts, correct, Chief? Okay, so I would say that we take the $100,000, that'll bring these back to the override budget amount, and as Jim says, let's monitor it as we go along and see where the new 3 shifts, what kind of income increase we get, and then we can adjust.
I think it's a good return on your money, because if we put 100 towards it, if we save 100 on the side, we're probably gonna lose 100. So by spending this 100, we're actually gonna save 100, I mean,
So you want to take and have an article, and I'm only talking out loud to make sure I understand what you're saying, that transfers $100,000 back into the fire department wage line items to maintain the fire department, contingent on the fact that the override fails.
correct.
Correct.
So if the override passes, the town meeting vote would be to not have that transferred out of there.
And we might want to set up that article after this vote on the override, so we'll know if we need it or not. If we don't need it, we can pull it.
You won't know if you need it until
Till the
after
election,
the
actually.
meeting.
Yeah.
What you need, if I'm listening to you, is an article at town meeting on
Mhm.
May 1st that says that we here are basically asking the town to transfer $100,000 out of our operational stabilization account to be held in abeyance in the wage line items of the fire department, and to be utilized contingent on the failure of a Prop 2.5 override.
And I wanna make it specific to the ambulance coverage.
Well, 2 lines, the EMT wages and the fire department wages, 50,000 each, if we want to be specific.
I hope the clerk got what I just
Well,
said.
I thought, doesn't it say here that this is a difference of 100 right here? And then if you add,
No, between here and here is 50,000.
I frankly, I know where you're coming from,
so
and
it's
I
these two
understand that,
lines.
but I think you're really getting on some
100
real
total.
thin ice with this whole thing.
Yeah,
It's kind of like, when we appropriate CPA monies, if we get the grant. If the grant doesn't come through, then the
Yes.
whole thing is null and void.
Right.
The only thing I would say is, and I'm sure Ed can look this up too, but you have to word it so that it will reduce your tax recap. So that's how you kind of have to word it. Even though you could put it in for the fire department, but you have to do it in order to reduce your tax.
Till the balance budget.
Correct.
Yeah.
So you have to word it that way.
I think we
so.
should word it specific to the 2
I
line
mean, because
items.
we've done that in the past, so we can look at other warrant articles that we've
Right,
done.
I feel that putting this forward, it at least gives the townspeople at the town meeting the option to where if they are not comfortable with cutting the ambulance like this, it gives them a mechanism, they can vote it and at least move it to the next level.
And we need to have these articles signed for posting by what day?
23rd,
The 23rd.
so you're gonna have to sign them at the next meeting.
So we're gonna have to have a selectmen's meeting next week.
Yep.
For the 17th.
17th.
I'm good on Monday and Tuesday.
So we're here on the 17th, right?
Well, I personally would rather just get it done next week,
Yeah.
you know, if you don't mind.
How would I mind?
I
So
don't know
we're
if you hear-
basically saying that we want to have a warrant that says that we will move $100,000 from operation stabilization to cover $50,000 under the fire department wages and another $50,000 under EMT wages,
Correct. Contingent on the override not passing.
contingent on the override.
Yeah,
Is that a motion?
I will make that motion.
Do I hear a second? Discussion, Ed, I need your guidance. Thoughts?
No, we can board that, so that happens.
You weren't just gonna jump up and say, Charlie, I think this is X or Y, huh? Okay,
Well, I will say that
this is
you're,
the
you're,
nice-
you're st- you're still basically building an unstructured, structurally unbalanced budget. So, you are kicking the can down the road.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah, but we're trying to wait to see what the, if you have it for a full year, the 3 shifts
Well,
should bring just.
if the override
Shifts?
passes, it
Three
solves
shifts.
Correct.
one more big issue.
Right.
That's why that's in paramount, that override has to pass.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yep.
And like I said, this just gives the town meeting members a mechanism if they choose to fund it.
Okay, motion made, seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous.
Tell me who made the motion and who seconded
Rainey made the motion.
No, I
Nope,
made it.
John and Jim.
I made the motion.
John and Jim,
Okay, thank
where did Rainey go?
She's over here.
I just read it.
Can we set up a meeting for next week? Even if it's just for that one item?
17.
Well, no, it's gonna be the whole article, so
Okay.
you have an option, you can do it the 17th, or you can have a meeting just special to sign off on the,
17th is a drop dead date, I believe, right, Roberts? So,
that, but the town election has to be tonight, doesn't it?
The ballot questions,
It's tonight.
well, I have to turn it in Monday.
We're meeting tonight, so that's,
Hmm.
yeah, so we have to do that tonight. We could have another meeting next week if you wanna have it for the,
yeah, I just don't like putting off something so important in case something happens.
well, you said, I thought you said you wouldn't be here the 24th or something.
Well, next week is not the 24th, though.
That's right.
Next week's the 10th, if we go on Tuesday, for instance.
All right. wanna
Well,
post it?
I just hope we didn't just create a mechanism to not pass the override.
Tell me, it's thin ice.
I know, you walk a fine line. I'm just saying that this is a disincentive now.
Well, yeah, I hear what you're saying, but I mean, to
But
me,
it's-
public safety is
I know.
important, and
It's
I know.
not a disservice to whoever needs the ambulance, and it's not.
Oh, I know, I
Yeah, I mean, you gotta-
totally agree. I'm just saying that that was a big driver of passing the override, was
Well, it's
having
still there.
ambulance.
It still has to happen.
yeah,
It still has to happen. It's only 1 year. It's kicking it down the road, like you said.
yeah.
Okay, next selectmen's meeting is gonna be the 10th,
Okay,
6 o'clock.
Is that Tuesday?
6 o'clock is good.
And what's that meeting going to be for?
The warrant?
The warrant. And solely just to sign the warrant.
If I can just add, if anything emergency comes up, you know, we're here.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's budget season, it's a lot of stuff going on, so I have no issue with staying a little longer. As long as people keep bringing me coffee, thank you.
You do realize you got docked 10 minutes tonight.
That's okay.
Okay, just making sure you realize that.
I got overtime last meeting.
I know, we all did. I think I was gonna get comp time at the rate that was going. All
Okay.
right,
Is-
so that addresses the fire department,
Yep.
correct?
Correct.
Now let's step into, is there any other arena that you wish to review?
Well, I voiced my concern about a couple things. I'd like to have the other board members' opinion about it.
Can I just make a point of clarification in that my department, my assistant got cut by 5 hours and I gave you a quarter of my expenses, which aren't even as much as everyone else gets. So my department did get cut. I have $865 in my expense budget. I gave you $265 back. I don't really have much more I can give you. The audit we have to do, I need my accounting software, so I just kind of want to make that point of clarification.
Yeah, I just noticed that. So the
Yeah.
assistant town clerk and the assistant accountant hours were both cut?
Yes, and the two girls in the treasurer collector's office.
They were also, those positions?
5 hours, and the admin assistant at
Highway.
the highway. All those positions were cut by 5 hours. So,
Out of a total of how many hours?
let's
Are
see.
they variable?
They're variable, yes. 2 people work 20 hours, 1 works 18, and then the other 2 work 30, or 31. And so, but,
As
So
I
you-
said, I just feel like we should provide some
Yeah.
assistant hours, since the other departments have it, to our town administrator, because I think
I-
that the workload is heavy.
I don't dispute that at all.
Yeah.
The workload is actually getting busier.
Yeah.
But where do we cut to add it there? You're talking about in the non-override section?
no,
Because it's-
in the non-override section, correct. That
Yeah.
position wasn't going to be refilled because
Right.
What would 12 hours of an assistant be? What dollar amount are we talking about?
Well, currently, it is 16 hours,
Yeah,
and that's $13,298.
For 16 hours?
16 hours a week, correct.
how much is it?
13,000,
Okay,
13,300, I guess, to round it up, so.
okay, so
And there's-
12 hours would be
well,
between 10 and 13.
Yeah.
Because it's only 16 hours, there's no benefits, so.
No. So 12,
But where are we gonna take this money from?
Here, you want to go into that?
What's that?
Exactly, that's
And there's no place to draw this
about
from.
10 grand, so.
You want to suggest it?
It's still 10 grand coming out
Go
of,
ahead.
You've already
We don't
introduced
really have any
it.
more
No, I already
expenses.
brought
The
it up.
only
You can-
pot of money is you gotta cut someone somewhere else.
Yep,
right. The only thing we added to it the last meeting we had, we added money for the library so they could be accredited in that column.
yeah.
That's the only thing we added.
But they were still cut. Even though you added money back, the library
was
still cut.
I understand. But we're adding above what Ed had in there, I believe. We added what, 13,000 for the library?
Sounds right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about a department that didn't get hit, I believe, you were saying health department didn't get hit, which looks like it really didn't. So do we want to look at that and see if there's anything we want to review there? Wages or health director and health agent. And
Or expenses, most departments got some cut in expenses.
Yeah.
problem is their SHARP program is,
Gonna be over,
Yeah.
the money that they have now.
yeah, and their expenses are only like $3 grand a year.
I mean, you could cut $500 there if you want.
Yeah, but that's not gonna do anything to do anything.
At least it shares the burden, if nothing else.
You want to make a recommendation? So we can discuss it, or?
I mean, I've been a big, believer of not using so much postage, given the electronic age we live in. Is there any additional money that we could recoup in postage or copying?
Oh, yeah, we cut the postage, 3,000.
Okay.
We're at the point where we're scraping the bone,
I don't,
Well, as Ed said earlier, when I came up with 3 different scenarios of how we come up with that $34,000, him and I discussed those. We put the best scenario in here that wouldn't potentially cut any more positions of people. But at the same time, 500 and 500 and 500 and 500 to make up $34,000 is a lot of 500s. So it's just, do you take 5 more grand from the bigger departments, which means they don't have any money to do anything, but they have the people, but they're sitting around because they don't have the money to actually do any work, because they can't buy supplies, and they can't fuel the cars for the police, and, you can't buy sand and salt and all that, so there's nowhere else that has bigger dollar amounts of expenses that you can actually take $5,000 or $10,000 from.
Street lighting is the only other one I can see.
Yeah.
We already cut
We-
that.
Well, we did cut 1,000.
Yeah,
I mean, if you
so-
shut them off, you got 20 grand.
But I mean.
But then there's a different story about the safety.
I understand. I'm
you
just
know?
throwing that out there.
Okay. I'm thinking outside the box here. Excuse me, the administrative assistant for the highway department got cut roughly $4,000 in the non-override budget. and the administrative assistant for the TA got eliminated, is there a way we can fund a little more for the highway admin assistant, and then they could she could share duties with both?
Two locations, impractical, two different topics.
Well,
The administrative assistant for the highway department is dealing a lot with chapter 90 monies, as well as payrolls and stuff of that nature.
Yeah.
The administrator's office is dealing with a completely different set of parameters and issues.
Oh, I agree, but can she move X amount of hours per day or every other day in each of the areas? I mean, two different jobs, but it gives her back all the hours, plus it gives each of them some.
I know, but I look at when we take a personnel and we move them from one department to another department, we are retooling them to understand what they're doing, and we're wasting productivity by the fact that we're bringing them into another office and trying to train them.
Sorry, but I don't agree with that. People can be trained pretty easily, and if it gives a person all the hours back, I think that person would be happy with that. I mean, it's not that hard to learn from one department to the other. People, when they change jobs, do it all the time. They take a couple months. But I don't know if that's feasible. It's just a thought of trying to bring one person back to the hours and
So
help
you
out.
give them 5 more hours
Yeah,
to work in that other office. But
Or-
you'd have to pay them at the rate they're getting paid at now,
right. How
which
many-
is
how many-
$17 and some change, which is twice as, $2 more than all the other admin assistants are getting paid.
I
That's
can't
a-
help
that's a
that. That's
good-
what.
I
that's
know,
what
but I'm
she-
just saying you'd have to pay her that amount of money in this
Is there
realm,
another
that's all.
admin assistant that's working part-time that we can increase the dollars a little to give some hours to?
No, they're the only 2 admin assistants. The police and fire don't have one. They do all their own paperwork.
Okay, so,
So you're paying, you know what I mean, they're the only 2 that are there right now,
well, we're looking for,
Who's
I
the
know.
other, was the other one besides
Opportunities
the
and-
highway?
is Velda, the admin assistant. For currently, what we have now is the town administrator. But the police and fire don't have one. They do all their own payroll and paperwork and
Okay.
everything else that they have, so.
Well, I still think that we need to provide some hours, because to cut that position out entirely is just
Yeah.
going to be a setup, a disaster. So I'll suggest maybe $500 from the building inspector expenses and $500 from the health department expenses. And then I'll leave it up to other people to suggest a little bit more, so that we have some TA, assistant administrative hours.
What if someone in this building did it? What if,
she looks around the
Lucy,
room.
where's Lucy?
I think we should not,
She ran out the door.
You know what I mean?
I think it's a mistake to actually put people into positions. We're looking at what a department needs for expenses and people. I think to start to say, well, we'll move this one over, and how about that one? I think that it's not a good precedence to set, to actually be thinking about who would have hours cut, whatever. I think we have to decide what the needs of a department are. So I'll make a suggestion that we cut $500 from the building inspector expenses and the health department expenses. And maybe somebody else can suggest a few more cuts here and there, so we can give some hours to the town administrator, if you agree.
I got a proposal for the board.
She's got a motion. Do I hear a second?
Did you make a motion? Or just,
Sure, I'll make a motion.
She said she proposed. So do I hear a second?
I'd actually like to hear Ed before, so I'm not gonna second it for now, right?
Okay, I'm fine with that.
And we'll come back to it.
Okay.
I authorize the board to renegotiate my contract for $3,000 less for fiscal year 19, if the override doesn't pass, and use that to fund some of this.
You sure you want to do that?
Yep.
Thank you.
So then you end up with $4,000 in that bucket, potentially? Because you have 5 and 5 is 1,000, and then 3, so that's,
Mhm.
unless you come up with some other things, I'm just,
Why don't we just, oh, yeah, 3,000 there.
Well, let's go back to the Board of Health. If we say $500, you're saying from the expenses line? Anything from the Sharps program?
No,
Why does that cost so much?
it's a disposal cost.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
plus,
It's not like we're paying the personal in town, it's just getting rid of the material.
yeah.
depends
Is
on
there-
usage,
I know,
too.
but is there any Sharps disposal in the transfer station?
No,
Or is that it?
no,
This is it.
no, this is it.
So,
Why don't we have the Sharps?
Because it has to be a secured site that we can monitor, and in the transfer station, we don't monitor those types of things.
Okay, a lot of other towns do. It may not
understand
cost
that.
us $3,000.
I haven't audited them to tell you exactly, but I know that I worked for years trying to get sharp programs in a lot of these towns, as
Yeah.
well as the old medications and stuff.
But sharps aren't medications.
No, but they're.
People put them in laundry jugs and throw them in the trash. So I don't understand why, I know it is, but a lot of towns have transfer stations, receptacles for sharps. And I'm betting it's not $3,000.
So when you do what I see, it doesn't utilize the transfer station, no
Yeah.
longer gets that town service?
Nope, because you have to bring it somewhere.
They used to be at the transfer station, and it did cost us about the same amount of money. It just was at the transfer station, and because it wasn't monitored, and the transfer station was only open a few days a week, we moved it. And
Okay.
What-
so it was there at one point, and it cost us about the same amount of money. We used to get a grant, but we don't get that grant anymore. They did away with it. So,
I think the question goes back to what I had brought up last
Okay.
week is, how much have we actually spent to date on these programs? I mean, 3,000 last year, 3,000 this year, but we might have spent only 1,800 last
no, we
year.
spent more last year,
So more than
and we
3,000?
will spend more than 3,000 this year,
So why are we budgeting just 3,000?
because that's all that was allowed in the budget.
So,
Just pull it out of the general expense account to balance it.
So, yeah,
so what do we
exactly.
do with it after, you know?
So, yeah, that was basically, it was increased, and then it was cut, because we level funded pretty much the year before, even though that's what they spent more than, so.
'Cause the big thing is, once we get an approved budget, the department's got to live within it.
Pardon?
I said, the big thing is, once we have a approved budget, the departments have to live within it. This is going to be the year that we're going to test that.
Well, currently, the Sharps program only has $84 left, and we're in March,
Okay.
so.
Yeah, the other thing, I'd like to ask Ed, what do you think the minimum amount we could have in there that we could just, for the assistant?
I would say at least 8 hours. I'd be happy 8 to 10 hours.
8 to 10
Versus 0, yeah.
So
I
that would
mean-
be what, about 8,000, 10,000, somewhere in there?
Well, at 8 hours, it's half of the 13.
$5,000. So you just gave 3.
I gave 3.
So we're down to 2. Why don't we knock 2 more thousand, get 25,000 for streetlights, go down 2 more thousand, it's funded at that position.
What about the building inspector and the health?
Yeah, so that's
I haven't gone
1,000,
there yet, I'm just.
and then you have the 3 from there, so that's 4 right there, right? So you're looking at like $6,000 for 8 hours, because you get paid $15 and some change.
Well, wait a minute. Let's back up here. We're going to hire somebody new, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we don't have to pay $15. We could pay $12. I mean, if we're hiring somebody new, we can start at a lower rate, right? We don't have to pay minimum wage even, which doesn't make,
Give us a few more hours, but I suppose.
but
Yeah,
we don't want to go there. yeah.
I think you're better off getting someone that's got some experience and some knowledge.
Yeah, but I mean, $12 an
Yeah,
hour,
'cause then, yeah,
how many hours? You're,
8 hours a week. 5,000.
yeah, $12 an hour is 5,000.
Very good.
So 2,000.
yeah, because currently, that position or that person is making $15.92 an hour.
But again, it's a new
And
position.
don't forget that position deals with confidential issues.
Confidential information.
So do you want less hours per week and pay somebody higher? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, that's fine.
All right, so do I hear a motion to renegotiate the town administrator's contract for a reduction of $3,000, which will mean that we are going to readjust that line item? We are also going to reduce the Board of Health expense line item by $5,000.
500.
500.
5,000 in there.
I could see them coming through the door at me.
There's not 5,000 in there to take.
And $500 from the building inspector's expense?
How much does he have here?
6212.
6212? Okay, so 500.
Charlie, just a point, you want to make sure this is only if the override doesn't pass.
This is only if the override doesn't pass. Is that what I'm hearing? I'm not making the motion, I'm just trying to.
Oh, I thought you were.
I can't. I'm trying to corral all this so that it's in one succinct statement, and I'm trying to help the clerk, because her and me play tag team, to make sure that we get it.
Okay, so we'll make a motion to accept Ed's offer to renegotiate his salary at $3,000 less per year for fiscal 19, with a caveat that if the override passes, that won't go into effect.
And to reduce the expense of the Board of Health?
That's a different motion, I think. We
We do want
All right.
we need a second on
to.
that.
Second.
So a question, we can discuss it. Is there a way to factor in here that if some extra money comes down the road, that we can go back? I guess we can just take another motion and renegotiate it again.
Extra money from where?
I don't know. Jim had an idea.
I
That
know,
didn't
I
work.
tried.
Yeah.
That didn't work.
But we can renegotiate. I mean, he's doing a nice thing and we appreciate it, but if we're able to make it whole, I'd like to be able to go back.
Well, we can always renegotiate
Yeah.
a contract.
Okay, so that's fine.
So
That's my only question.
You still need to identify another $1,000.
so we have a motion and a second relative to the town administrator. All in favor?
Aye,
Aye.
All right.
Okay. Did the clerk get that motion okay?
and thank you, Ed.
You're welcome.
So now we are looking at a motion to reduce the building inspector's expense line item by $500. Almost said it again. The Board of Health by $500,
Expense line, yes.
expense line item. Any other place?
And by doing that, we're gonna put that total of $1,000 under the TA's admin assistant line.
And that'll bring it up to 4,000.
Correct.
Is that the ceiling we're looking at?
I think we were looking at 5,
Yeah, because this,
Right.
right? Isn't that 8 hours or so?
So let me ask this question here. We have $6,500 we have in the override and the non-override budget for technology services. I know Ed was looking at potentially a contract of some sorts with some IT company in order to kind of get us up and running on what we need to, if, you know, how much will that contract be, and will we need that whole $6,500 in that particular account? I don't know what that, or, you know, technology equipment, there's $5,500 in it in the non-override budget. We did cut that by $1,000. You know, that's for items like, you know, battery backups, new towers, new hard drives, you know, monitors and all that. I think most of the equipment that we have is relatively up to date. You know, we might need a few items, but I don't know if we would need $5,500 worth of items potentially.
Take 1,000 out of that.
Or if you take 5 and 5. I don't know, it's just a thought.
What do you think,
We
Ed?
know that we have to replace one switch, but that's not all that expensive, so I'd say take 1,000 out of each one.
All right.
I have another question. We're going to be getting, hopefully, $138,000 because we're designated as a green
Green
community.
community.
Is there anything that's currently in the budget that could be switched over to that? I know it's all not guaranteed, but no? Nothing?
Nothing.
Maybe the insulation, which we don't have money for to pay
But
anyway.
But that's not on the, in the
That's
budget
not in the
anyway,
budget,
right?
I know.
At the rate that's going, that's gonna be the.
So I'll make a motion then to, we're talking about reducing each of those lines by 1,000?
I believe that's what the
Okay,
discussion
and
was.
add to the town administrator assistant line.
Can you tell me what is the $1,000 coming from?
Technology equipment and $1,000 from each, and technology services.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second it for discussion. So all those together adds up to $6,000, and if you do 8 hours a week at 15, that's 6,240. So he's gonna have to finagle it.
Well, the other part of it is you might hire somebody in August.
Yep. Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Jim?
I'm gonna say no on that one.
I say yes, and move forward. 3 to 1.
I just have a quick question. What line item, did we save the 13,000 on the tuition for transportation? Remember we had that last week? What line item was that?
That is under the education section, under vocation tuition. Instead of 80-something, it's 69,000, from 82 to 69.
Okay.
The vocation
Yep.
transportation, from 82 to 69.
Yep, okay, got it. I was just trying.
Yep, yep.
Good.
Is there any other budget line items the board wishes to approach?
In either budget or just one?
Either budget. Do I hear a motion to approve the budget as modified?
Wait, I have one thing. Sorry. So it's not in this spreadsheet that you have because I haven't added it yet. But I need to add a line which is going to be a wash because you'll add a revenue piece and then you'll add an expense piece to pay PEG programming. So it's going to be a wash, you just have to add it.
Just money coming in, going out?
And money coming out, correct. It's money that we get from the cable, but otherwise, the way that we voted at town meeting, it's like ambulance, you have to vote it at town meeting in order to pay them.
Yep.
And this would kind of work around that instance, because we don't want an enterprise fund, because that doesn't make
So
any
we
sense.
need to add that to the budget?
I will add that to the budget, but I'll add that revenue piece also.
Okay.
So it's a wash, but I will have to
So we'll
add that.
as a modification to the budget. Quick got that? So I ask again, do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion because we have to get this passed.
Do I hear a second? Do I have any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. There's our budget for the coming year as being proposed to town meeting for town meeting to vote. Moving on.
And Vicky, just for my clarification, do you concur that the override amount stays pat at $493,163.41 for those changes?
Yes, I have it upstairs, I just didn't send it to you, so.
Just say it one more time.
493,000,
$163.41. Because that will come up later for a ballot question.
And that equals how many cents on the dollar, tax rate?
it would be an increase of 72 cents per thousand.
72%.
And so that, what people don't understand is your tax rate already goes up 2.5% every year. Doesn't matter. So it's gonna be on top of that, which is like 40 cents. All of it's gonna be based on what our value is, our total value of the town. Currently it's 688 million and some change. It could change next year, but that usually is 38 to 40 cents, 2.5%. And then the override would add another 72 cents, so it's like $17.86 per thousand. That's just the estimate. People don't quote me.
Dropping off too, so it may go down a little bit.
We have one piece which would be the,
Roof.
the roof, correct. I probably could go through and do that calculation. It would be a big guesstimate,
Yeah.
because there's a lot of pieces that fall into that. So it may be like,
Regional's coming off soon too, right?
Not this
that's
year.
2020.
2020?
Yeah. So
So-
that may be maybe 10 cents that might come off.
Okay, but we,
The roof, you're saying?
Yes,
10
yep.
cents. Oh, okay.
so we need to have that number right there for the town meeting.
But it's not gonna be exact,
You gotta get it as close as you can.
because I don't know what the values are gonna be next year. I don't know what all the pieces are that are gonna
Based
fit
on
into it.
today's values, I
That's
guess.
pretty much what I,
Because if we don't know a number based on something, people
I
are
mean, your
gonna-
override is gonna increase 72 cents per thousand. That's what your increase is gonna be.
Right.
Your taxes already is gonna go up
2.5.
2.5 on the rate, not on what you pay on taxes. People have this misconception that my taxes are going up 2.5%. If you pay $5,000, it's not going up 2.5% of $5,000. It's 2.5% of what the rate is.
So the rate is 16.72.
Right now, the rate is 16.72, correct.
So-
2.5% is 42 cents.
Okay.
And then it's at 72 cents on top of that. So, again, it's all dependent on what the value is, and all the, because you want to be able to maximize your levy limit and what you can tax. And there's always a little bit left, because you can't get it to the exact penny, because the numbers just don't work that way. There'll always be something left on the table, a couple $1,000s, so. But that's about as close as you'll
So
probably
would-
get.
Is this right? If it's 16, no, that's not right. I'm trying to figure out the 2.5%. So 16.72 is our rate, times 2.5%, it's coming out 42 cents. That make sense?
Yeah,
So 42 plus 72?
correct.
And then there's a slight, maybe a 10-cent deduct there.
Which I'll have to go back and see, because I can't, I'll have to see if I can, I'll take last year's numbers and put that out and take it off as if I was calculating it that way. So if you had a $300,000 house, right, I'm
Yeah.
just, and this is not the 2.5%, this is just the override piece, you'd be paying an extra $216 per year.
I just figured out on a $300,000 house
Yeah.
with both the override plus, it's like $342 a year. 42 and 72 cents. So that's what we need to let folks know.
Well, it's only the increase, 2.5, I mean, 2.5 is what you're looking at.
Is what you're gonna be looking at anyway, doesn't matter.
Don't add the 2.5 onto it already.
Well, yeah,
That's already there.
we gotta say it separately. Your taxes are already going up this.
Already going up
Here's
this.
how much more they'll go up.
And I don't foresee that people's houses or values are gonna change, but they might,
Yeah,
and that all plays into this piece too,
yeah.
so.
Okay,
Thank you, Vicki.
now, we need to move into the articles for town ballot question. And that basically focuses on what we just did with our budget.
Did you do the warrants in the minutes? Or are you just going to skip those for now?
The warrants in the minutes?
On the agenda.
Warrants.
Warrant
The
article.
warrants that you signed, that's all he's talking about.
Oh. You have the warrants handy, Ed?
They're listed on here if you want them. Right here.
Oh, these warrants, I was
Here you go,
thinking
Joe.
about town.
You wanna read those or just read off that
I'll
one?
read it off. Is there any new ones there from yesterday?
No, those will be on the next,
Four here?
they'll be on the next meeting.
All right.
Or there.
All right, I sign warrant PD 18-38, or 39, there's too many warrants in my life.
You know if you signed any new ones? I didn't call you to tell you to come sign something, so you're good.
Don't start.
I called you to come sign something.
$39,895.15. PD 18-38A for $165,334.04. P 18-38 for $258,646.82. W 18-39 for $83,588.17. These warrants were signed and acted upon in the last week, a week and a half. You want to do minutes review
Sure.
for approval? Minute approval, February 6, 2018. Does the board do you want me to read them all, or you want to do one at a time?
February. You have
February
February?
6th.
I don't have those in the packet.
They're on, online, in our
25.
Dropbox,
Page 25,
yeah.
if that helps. We also have February 20th, 2018 minutes, page 30. March 6th, 2018 minutes, page 35. Open time to the public. You don't have a budget? I don't have a budget either, they wiped it out tonight.
Ready to go.
Waiting on Rainey and Jim.
Okay.
How many are we reviewing right now?
3 of them. February 6th, February 20th, March 6th.
Yeah, March is the last one.
Okay, so I wasn't present, so you can approve it without me.
There a
Which one
motion?
Weren't you present at? Which one weren't you present at?
I didn't start until May 1st.
Okay, so hold on a second. So the March 6th, 2018, it says Maureen Groden. Yeah,
Yeah, these are all 2018.
yeah, these are recent.
They're split up in the packet, that's why. There's some at the end, there's some in the middle.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
Yeah.
they're all,
At the end of executive session.
yeah, yeah. And
Okay.
I'll make a, you ready for a motion?
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve February 6, 2018, February 20, 2018, and March 6, 2018.
I'll second that.
Discussion? Any modifications?
I will see, put that on.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Calendar and announcements, selectmen's meetings, which we just went over, are April 10th and April 17th. And town meeting is May 1st. And town election's May 15th.
And May 8th and May 22nd, we have.
May 8th and May 22nd also, yeah, our selectmen's meetings at this point. Now we get into the articles for spring town meeting and annual town warrant articles. Given the length of this, do you wish to read all this? I'm not hearing anything one way or the other.
I think more appropriately, the question is, do the four of you want me to read all this?
I think it's a good idea.
And I'll, okay.
You just got on that list, right?
Well, because one of the things here, Article, is it 21? I mean, did we just change that, or no? Oh, that's just assessor software.
Yeah.
I think it's a good
Yeah.
idea to at least
Let me go through
let
it.
people know what the
Yeah.
warrants are.
Yeah, let me go through it, and some of them I'll specifically read, and some I'll just reference.
Okay,
There's a standard warrant article for the educational awards, which I will bring over from the last town meeting. There's also a standard article for presentation of certificates, which I will bring over from the last annual town meeting. The next thing, which is a vote by the board, is does the board want to include a borrowing article for the purchase of a highway department dump truck for $250,000?
Was that budgeted?
Well, if we borrow, we won't really have a payment until fiscal year 2019.
So here we go back, wondering if the override's gonna
Or
pass.
2020, rather, so.
Yeah.
I know
and-
what you meant.
yeah,
That's
and
fine.
And if you want my recommendation, while we really need to replace that truck, my recommendation would probably be to skip over it for,
Yeah, I would like to, but I
This-
think skipping over it's the proper.
Is the board, what's the board's pleasure? My personal feeling is we skip over this.
The truck?
Yeah.
Me also, yes.
yeah, I agree. I think it's
Yeah.
screaming
So strike that article.
unnecessary.
That would be such a hard sell.
Yep.
I agree.
But wasn't he also supposed to come here and
Yeah.
discuss it?
Yeah.
That didn't
Yeah,
happen.
but based on what we've been watching with the budget and everything else,
Okay.
it sort of looked like an uphill battle with the whole.
Okay.
The next one would be an article for purchase of assessor software for $15,000 transferred from operating stabilization, which is a 2/3 vote. The assessors do need to upgrade their financial software package in Vision, because they have, Vision is moving away from the platform they are currently on and will not support it.
Yeah, I think that's a necessity. It just keeps going.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Now, was that the one where we had the problem with updating a computer they had, or we were gonna wait and do this instead?
No, the next,
It's the next,
yeah,
Okay.
and I recommend you vote on this as it's a financial
Okay.
for inclusion. But yeah, the next then we'll deal with the server.
Do I hear a motion to include the 15,000 for software?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous?
The next article, as you remember, the assessors were also looking for $6,000, which was going to be an annual reoccurring cost for cloud storage and data backup. My recommendation, rather than doing that, and the reason they were looking at that option is the server we have currently in Town Hall, which only has a year left on its useful life anyway, was not compatible with the upgrade. So my recommendation is, rather than doing the $6,000 reoccurring every year, that we invest $7,500. And yes, there will be some small ongoing expenses for the maintenance of that server, but we shouldn't have to replace it for another 4 to probably 5 years. And I'm saying 5 years. So the next article I recommend to the board is an article to purchase a replacement server for the town hall, $7,500 to be transferred from operating stabilization, which will require a 2/3 vote.
I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous? Clerk got that? Getting simpler, isn't it?
Well, it's in writing.
Yeah, that helps, that's what I'm saying, it's getting. Article, go ahead.
The next article, as you are aware, there are 2 boilers at the Norris Elementary School. The second boiler has started to leak just like the first one did last year. So the next article is for the repair of the Norris School boiler, number 2, $50,000 to be transferred from the operating stabilization. This will require a 2/3 vote. And just to follow up on this, the Green Communities Grant would not cover a repair to the boiler. It would cover if they wanted to upgrade it to an energy efficient boiler, but to do that, it would also mean changing over the entire means of how they heat the school to a forced hot water system. You're looking at $250,000 for each boiler, so I recommend we go into the lights and the windows in the Norris School with our DOER Green Communities Grant funding.
No, I had a question to that.
I do
Now,
too.
The last boiler, they
Right.
were gonna fix it, it was gonna be a lot less expensive, but they got into it, it was neglected, and it was a lot worse than they thought. Is this one to the beginning of that stage, or is it actually to where it
Well,
looks?
they're sisters.
Yeah, but.
Right,
so
and we
I-
paid more than $50,000 to replace, to fix the first boiler, I think, didn't we? Wasn't it 60,000?
40-something.
Oh, really?
They
I thought it was
threw-
more
they
than, they threw
in
6,
about 10,000
All
of
right.
their own school budget
Oh, that's right.
to that.
right, okay. So it
And-
did cost more money, though.
And this one here, to be quite candid, didn't have the panels off when I looked at it.
Yeah, we walked in there.
Yeah,
That's
the
why.
other one had the panels off, so it was like, oh my God, time.
Yeah.
So my guess is, given the fact that they're both the same age and had the same maintenance program,
Mhm.
we're looking at the same thing.
Well, last time we had to actually, it was an emergency, so we were able to hire somebody immediately to replace it, but now it's gonna have to go out to bid because it's not an emergency. Do we have any estimates? I would just hate to cut this short and then not have to, and then expect that they're not gonna replace it through their budget.
They got a quote from the company that repaired the first one.
And that's, so that it can be done with $50,000.
Yes.
Okay.
And yes, they will have to go out to
Yeah.
bid on it because it's, well,
That's
you're
a-
right at the level, so they could actually go out and get 3 quotes,
But if they think it's gonna come in over that 50,
but then they'd have to bid it.
'cause it is a Chapter 149, so.
Yeah.
And they also have their own operational budget too, so if they have to draw 10 grand out of it, they probably could.
Right, but it's still the dollar limit, no matter where the funding comes from, yeah.
I'm just saying if the bid came in above 50.
Yeah, but that's the bid limit, that's what Ed was saying. So if we think it's gonna come in above 50, we gotta go out through a Chapter 149 bid.
But that's them, not us.
Well,
So do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion that we have a warrant
Second.
article for the second boiler for $50,000 out of operating stabilization.
I second that.
Any more discussion?
Where will this take the operational? We've got 367, we took,
370 something now.
371, I think Vicki said.
371 is what she
It'll
said.
bring us down around 300.
we got 100,000 for the fire, so it'd
So
bring
you're
it
down
to
to 2.
200, yeah, okay,
Okay.
okay.
The next one,
You had a vote.
oh, I'm sorry.
Did we
All
vote?
in favor?
Yeah.
Aye.
You did.
Aye, sorry. Okay, good.
Next one, Ed.
The board had asked me to draft a question, a bylaw change to establish the town treasurer, or a bylaw to establish the town treasurer as an appointed position. This would also need to be a ballot question. You do have that in front of you. And actually, there has been a change to this in November of 2016. The statute changed. So previously, if the town were to vote for a change, someone that was in office would remain in office till their term expired, and then the appointment would become valid. Same was true if someone is elected at the same election that the ballot question passed to make it appointed. In November of 16, they changed it a bit, so now if someone, and this is the case we'd be in, if someone was elected and the ballot question passed, that individual would serve for a period of time until the Board of Selectmen actually made an appointment to the position.
So it would be up to the Board of Selectmen how long that period was?
Exactly.
Okay.
Given what's going down at our election this year, I'd rather take and table this until the following year so that the voters have a clearer ballot to look at things.
Yeah, I'm going to disagree. We've been trying to do this
Disagree.
for a long time, and I think this is going to help the town hire a qualified person. And when we're in dire straits now, we need the best person we can get for this job. And we don't know what an election will bring.
I'd like to add one thing to that. After we're done with this article, we should consider town clerk as well.
Absolutely.
Well, don't forget, it's up to the, I mean, I support it going in front of the voters.
Right,
So I would say yes, so that it will go in front of the voters and they can decide.
exactly. And one of the things is, and probably talking out of school, but the past treasurer supported this going to an appointed position, because part of the issue was you don't know what your future is if you're appointed every 3 years, so you're working hard, and all of a sudden you could be out because somebody is more popular, quote unquote, although you have more experience. And I think that's a lot of, part of the reason that we don't have a treasurer right now.
The other reason I heard is when we do give raises, 2% across the board, they're not qualified for that. They don't, they got
Elected.
the budget's fixed with that.
Right. They have to put it in their budget and get approved at town meeting.
I also think that the position, when it's elected, it changes the dynamic in the department around, I mean, this is an important position, so that when, in terms of relating to everybody else in town, municipal government, having it be an elected position changes people's approach and how firm someone's supposed to be about collecting bills and that sort of thing will be very different if you're going to be subject to an election.
Yeah.
So I think it should be appointed.
Yeah, there's no politics in it.
Yeah.
And some people are gonna object because they want the ability to vote for people, which I understand, but again, we've been lucky the last election we had, down in Whiteley, last 2 elections, but the elections before that, and I think somewhere in the minutes that we just released, one of the issues we had is a past treasurer didn't go after the taxes, didn't sign the tax agreement properly with a property that's sitting out there that owes us $130,000, and we were getting pennies on the dollar, and as long as they kept paying those pennies, we couldn't go after them. So if you don't have the right person who knows the rules, and I think to your point, isn't afraid to say, hey, I like you personally, but this is a town issue, we need the back taxes. If we don't have the right person there. So I'm all in favor of this, and I don't know that we need a motion, do we? It's on the ballot, right, I mean, it's on the town meeting right now, right?
Well, it will be if you
Tell him.
say you wanted to.
Yeah, we
and-
definitely
and
want
then
it
it's a
on
t-
there.
And it's a two-part question,
Yeah.
because I also have to submit the ballot question, which is the first.
Right. So do we need a
Yes.
motion? So I'll make the motion. We
I'll
leave it
second
on there. Okay.
More discussion? All in favor?
Aye,
Okay, unanimous.
And you're good with it as a ballot question also?
absolutely.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
let me stop you, Ed, for a second. You brought up the town clerk. Do you wish to inject that into this?
I think we should do them both together.
Okay.
Do I hear that as a motion?
I'll make the motion. We add a similar motion for the town clerk
The warrant,
position.
right? Yeah.
Warrant, yeah.
Do I hear a
I'll second it.
second? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous?
You able to vote, Jim? Does it matter?
What was that?
You able to vote? Does it matter?
It's an elected position, I would imagine.
Okay. Just want to be clear.
You're not voting on a person, you're voting on a
Right, I'm
position.
voting.
Position, yeah, okay.
They allow you to vote?
So that first one is only, to appoint the treasurer?
No, it's
To have the position be appointed versus elected.
treasurer. collector.
Treasurer collector.
In both motions also,
So it is treasurer collector?
Yes.
Okay. Shouldn't it say that, because in here it only says treasurer?
it says treasurer/collector
Yeah,
on what
in the
what I'm
actual-
looking at, yeah.
Oh, okay, okay.
In-
That was my mistake.
Okay, no, that's okay, I just wanted to clear.
I got it online.
You're welcome.
Maureen, just to clarify that, I think that if she's running, my sister running for this position, I would.
She is running for the position.
well,
Oh,
that's
for the
elected.
appointed position, yes, I get
If
it,
she's
yeah.
running for the appointed,
Yeah,
would-
I just want to be
Yeah.
sure about it, that's all.
If I'm still here.
And just make it clear, both motions included putting it on the ballot too.
Okay.
Good.
Thank you,
Okay.
and I'll read into that motion that I drafted another one, too.
In your spare time.
In my spare time, yes.
You have your assistant.
I need a good laugh, thank you, Jim. Yes. The next one was requested by the town clerk. It's to amend the current town bylaws to increase the quorum to 50 legal voters from 25. And you should have that one in front of you labeled as H.
H, yeah?
Mhm.
Now, my question, does that include the town caucus?
Oh, town meeting.
No, town
Oh,
meetings.
just Town meeting.
Town
only.
meetings,
Okay,
yeah.
because the caucus wouldn't admit that last time, it was
No.
on 30
30
seconds.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll make a motion, we accept this.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I had a senior moment. Leave me alone.
Well, I just want to mention that Janine did give us some data around the number of people that attended the meetings, and we have been consistently fine. So it's not a worry that we won't be able to have a town meeting, I don't believe.
The next proposed article, it was submitted by the Board of Health so that they'd be eligible for certain grants at the transfer station, which is a mandatory recycling bylaw, which is labeled as I.
Well, could you explain that now? Is the mandatory recycling, is that gonna affect everybody with dumpsters? Or is it?
I haven't read this thoroughly, but let me do it for a minute. My presumption would be yes, but let's see.
Just wanted to make that clear.
Yeah.
This says separation of recyclable and compostable yard waste.
Right. We already do it at the landfill, so the only logical thing, this is gonna be on trash pickup,
It
and
does,
it'll be dumpsters as well.
well, it does say commercial, industrial, municipal, and institutional.
So yes, it would be residential and commercial. So dumpster-wise, curbside pickup-wise, yes.
And I gotta tell you, I don't have an issue with people having to separate. I'm a big one for recycling.
Is there any increased cost to the town?
No, it was actually a benefit to the town.
Yeah.
Okay.
Benefit to the town, increased cost to the homeowner, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, theoretically, just because we don't do curbside pickup, I'm just gonna concentrate on the transfer station, is that whatever you can move from trash to recycling, even when recycling fees are way down, you're and I'm going back, so the rates may have gone up. You're moving something that you're gonna pay, the town's gonna pay $78 a ton to remove into something that, even if you get 1 cent, per ton, you're getting something for it, but you've taken the cost away from being in the trash. So theoretically, by promoting recycling, you should be able to actually reduce, if you had the same levels, your trash costs of having it taken away.
I was thinking more in terms of staff, time, or effort.
Should not.
I'm not crazy about that one. I think it's gonna be a cost to the townspeople.
Still goes to town meeting for vote.
I understand.
Did we take a vote on it, or are we still?
No, we haven't made a motion yet.
Yeah, I'll make a motion, we accept it.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
3-1.
The next article would be to amend the revolving fund bylaw by adding Conservation Commission to it, which isn't currently listed. So that would be amendment to the current bylaw, then and setting its spending limit to $10,000. And then for the items that, or the departments or uses that are currently listed in the revolving fund bylaw, to set their spending limits at conservation $10,000, council on aging $31,000, dog licensing and control $8,000, electrical inspections $20,000, plumbing inspections $20,000, park commission $10,000, planning board administrative expenses $10,000, planning board consultants $15,000, tax title $10,000, weights and measures $3,000, and zoning board of appeals $5,000.
Now, where were these, are these all brand new caps, or where were they? Are they increases?
My
Decreases?
My guess would be that they, well, except for weights and measures, I think stay the same. If we're redoing them, I'm guessing they're increases, but I did not take a look at the old list, to be honest with you.
So we're setting caps for these existing revolving accounts, and we're creating a new one for Conservation Commission.
Correct.
Without knowing what the current one's on, it's kind of hard to say yes or no.
Well, basically what this is they collect money for different things they do.
Yeah.
And that money is put in a revolving account to pay off the expenses for whatever they need to pay off.
Granted.
What this is basically saying is they can't exceed $10,000 without burning it down.
Oh, understood, but if they're big increases, I'd just like to know why they need them.
Did we double them, or were they cut in half? I'd just like to know, that's all.
I mean, my memory is that, the 10,000s used to be 5,000, but that's just my memory. I could be wrong.
Yeah, and basically what you want to do is you want to keep pace with basically
Yeah.
the funds that are coming in. So if you are doing more business or getting more dog licenses or more electrical inspections, you need to raise those limits.
So if they gain conservation, for instance, number one, $10,000, if they take in more than $10,000 during the fiscal year, what happens to the surplus?
The surplus that's left in those accounts sits there, but I believe.
Yeah, it should stay there.
Right,
But they
the
can't spend
spending
it.
limits.
They can't spend it.
They
so-
can't spend it until,
They can keep building it up, building it up.
well, theoretically, it wouldn't happen because unless there was some type of anomaly that some
But it's all
some
based on
project came in that all of a sudden paid $50,000 or whatever.
It's based on
fees.
activity, so
Yeah.
Vicky's not here, so does the town accountant keep track of this to say, oh, you've got a $10,000 revolving account, you've got $24,000 in there?
They do. Because we have to
could-
report to the DOR every year on
We
those.
take that out in surplus and put it back into the general fund, any of these accounts?
You could probably vote that at a town meeting to do that.
I think it could be a source of income, I don't know, because we don't see anything.
No, generally, it's used, I've seen it in libraries for fines, and they'll purchase other new
Yeah.
books with it. You see it used a lot with inspection services, so you do not have to go and appropriate from the general fund to, pay the electrical inspector or the gas inspector. Gets paid from the fees that come in from that.
It's a revenue source for these departments, and I guess my concern is.
Well,
that
it's a revenue source that's direct from the fees that are paid, rather than saying, okay, the fees going into the general fund, we now have to appropriate, $8,000 or $10,000 in expenses to, the inspector or the town clerk or what have you.
I understand the concept, I just want to make sure we keep track of them, and, they don't turn into a
Like I say, that's
revenue fund.
That's part of the year-end closeout, and when DOR sets the tax rate, and
Okay.
they look at all of that. And they will also, if for any reason one went into a deficit, it's gonna pop up, or you're gonna have to raise and appropriate that.
One that sticks out is Council on Aging for $31,000, which is an odd number. You're on the Council on Aging.
Yeah, I can't explain that. I think Janet ended up leaving. I was looking at that. That does seem pretty high, but I also wonder whether or not the money coming in for the van is delayed because it's a grant, and, that they use it to pay, I don't know.
Well, if we do move forward with this, could we ask at the town meeting on the article that we put what it previously was, just to have it listed there, so if people on the floor ask?
Well, can you find out? and
Yeah,
we'll just
I can
approve this
find out.
next Tuesday?
Yeah, I'll find out and send it to you before that.
I'm with Rini, though. I mean, by saying, yes, we're approving this, not knowing what it really is, that's something I'm comfortable with.
I didn't say approve it, I'm just saying, if we move forward with this, I would like to have the previous
Absolutely.
limits,
Yeah.
and then where we're going with it,
Yeah.
that's all, just so the people would understand.
Yeah, so we can understand. So we can put it on next week's, meeting.
So we're all in favor of this one?
Well, we're gonna hold it.
We're
We're
gonna
gonna
hold on
hold it
that
till
one.
next week. And Ed's gonna put current dollar amounts on there. We don't know really what we're voting on. The Council on Aging is just a weird number, so.
Okay.
All right, the next item is a request from the Board of Assessors that there be an article on town meeting to accept Clause 22, 22A, 22B, 22C, 22D, 22E, 22F under Mass General Law's tax exemptions. These all have to do with veterans exemptions.
I was there when that all occurred.
Me too. Well, the last meeting we talked about that.
I was there when the veteran's wife came in.
No, really.
Yeah, and this came up because of the way Mass General laws are written, that, and I'll probably mess it up, but
Very unclear.
it's very unclear, but the widow of a widow or widower of a service person who was killed in action or killed as a result of actions in a war or a conflict, there are certain criteria for them to be actually exempt from real estate or personal property taxes. One is that they reside in the state for 5 years. However, if the local community adopts these clauses or tax exemptions, it really kicks in that they'd be eligible, I think it's after 1 year of residence, so.
So is this a permanent?
What's that?
Is this a permanent exception?
It's a permanent exception.
All we're doing right now is putting it in front of town meeting vote.
Specifies in here, conservation van.
Yeah.
Do I hear a motion?
Can you just repeat what you just said, Charlie?
All we're doing is putting this on town meeting floor.
And it's changing the domicile clause from 5 years to 1 year.
But we're not, all we're doing is allowing the voters the right
Right.
to vote on this.
Yeah, I'll make the motion.
No, we're not deciding.
Okay. Do we anticipate when the warrants go in front of the public that it'll also say who the primary person is to speak to the warrant?
Yeah.
So someone will
I
be
hope so.
speaking to this?
Normally says
Okay.
that, yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
most of it says it's John Martin, John Martin, John Martin.
I made the motion anyways.
All right, I'll second it.
All in favor
Aye.
Motion is, so abstain.
to put this on the warrant?
Oh, okay, we're still in the.
Yep.
Veterans
Clause.
exception.
I'm good with it.
All in favor?
Yes.
Aye,
Aye.
unanimous. Okay, Ed.
The next one would be a standard article for establishing the Transfer Station Enterprise Fund for fiscal year 2019. Wages of $37,980, operating expenses of $130,520, Board of Health environmental testing of $1,695, debt service of $23,525, for a total of $193,720. And that $188,551 be raised from transfer station enterprise revenues, and $5,169 to be taken from retained earnings. To
Question.
balance that.
Isn't there a big reduction in environmental testing? Wasn't that like around 12,000 a year at one
Yeah,
point?
there's been a huge drop in that because of renegotiation, but I have a question on that line item. Why do we designate it as the Board of Health Environmental Testing? Why don't we just have environmental testing?
Well, is that where the money comes from?
Doesn't come from the Board of Health, it comes from the
From the
enterprise.
enterprise fund.
Okay.
So I would reword that to just simply say environmental testing.
The Board of Health is not responsible for that?
Well, they are,
Well,
but it still comes out of,
Yeah.
it doesn't come out of the Board of Health, that's why.
Right.
Why are we saying
This-
Board of Health?
Well, it's
when
a
not-
transfer station.
Right,
Well, are they responsible for who
Well,
oversees it?
They're responsible for
Well,
overseeing.
technically, the Board of Health is responsible, however, they have delegated the oversight and the running of it to the Highway Department.
So either way, if we take,
technically,
take it out.
town meeting established the enterprise account will put the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Health overseeing that operation years ago when that was created. Years way before you would, but that's technically what happened. But, that said, I still don't see why it says Board of Health Environmental Testing. If that money's not coming out of their budget, it should be just simply.
I'm fine with
I
taking
think
it
that's a
out.
good idea.
It's probably said that because it always has.
Now,
I don't
we're,
think it did.
No?
we're taking money from retained earnings, so we're drawing down on that, right?
Correct.
Is there do we know what's left in there? Retained earnings? or-
I would have to ask Vicki
Looking
that question.
everywhere for money.
No, I'm just wondering if there's enough in there for this year, then what happens next year or the year after?
Okay.
Because when you draw from retained earnings, you're not supposed to be drawing from that, you're supposed to be adding to.
What happened was 2 years ago, we did a whole environmental assessment relative to the testing.
Yep.
And we negotiated with DEP and we reduced our cost of testing a lot.
Yeah, because we don't have to do it as often, if I remember.
As often, and the parameters are not as stringent.
Right.
So basically, we brought this so that it's been running a balanced budget for the last couple of years.
Right, but now it's not.
Maybe now it's
Well, it's taking money from retained earnings. If it was all coming from
Right.
the enterprise revenues, that would be balanced.
I understand, but before, we didn't have retained revenues, we were taking it out of the town general fund.
Yep.
So, I guess what I'm saying is, yeah, we shouldn't be taking the $5,000 out of there, but at least it's there as retained earnings
For now, yeah,
for now. Whereas before, 2-3 years ago,
it wasn't.
we were in the red.
I'm just concerned that we do that.
Right, we're gonna be 2 years down the road in the whole lawsuit.
Yeah, yeah, we're sort of following
Now, I mean, the alternative to that is make up that $5,169 from transfer station revenues. That could be an increase in the bags, it could be increase in the permits.
We did that about 2 years ago.
Yeah, but I gotta tell you, it's $2 a bag now, and I think as the bag prices go up like they did from 1 to 2, it helps the recycling. People wanna get rid of that stuff out of that bag, and they wanna recycle.
Well,
So how does the other article, mandatory recycling, the rest of the town affect Are they gonna add any revenue to this line here?
Good. You never know how, cause
So
and
that
effect.
may eventually take care of that $5,000, we don't know.
Also, that bylaw is supposed to increase the awards that come back from DEP on our recycling, which goes back to the transfer station,
Right.
Mhm.
so.
So that might negate that if that passes, then, something I voted against.
Yes.
Maybe I should change my.
And the other part to this is our cardboard market fell out, where we used to make money on cardboard.
Yeah.
But then we lost that.
Yeah.
But that's all because of the Asian trade market.
I just think it should be a self-sufficient fund. We won't wait
I
too.
agree with you. I agree with you totally, John. No argument for me. But I see this as one of those things that one year we're doing okay, another year we're not doing
Yep.
okay, and we
Yep.
keep adjusting it. But at least we're not talking lots and lots of money here. Anyways, next one, Ed.
Do we have to
You want a
vote?
motion
Yes.
on that, Charlie?
I'm sorry. Do I hear a motion to move this?
So move.
The only question I have is, I just had a question about.
I'll
the
second it for the questions. Go
Okay,
ahead.
I'm sorry, thank you. We're still on the J, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. The only question I have is about that retained earnings, like where is that coming from?
That's from last year's income. That's my understanding. Last year's income.
Yeah, retained earnings is, in an enterprise fund, is almost free cash to a municipality. So
Okay.
if your costs exceeded your
Expenses?
revenues, you're in a deficit. But when your revenues exceed your actual cost at the end of the year, DOR will certify that as retained earnings.
Okay, we don't have any idea of what the history of this is?
Oh, Vicky would have that.
Yeah, I don't.
All right, I was just
Yeah.
curious.
It was in the red a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And everything got adjusted and all the rest of that. So
Okay,
that gave the retained
Okay.
earnings. As for this year, you can see that it's going the other way.
And we don't know how much is in retained earnings, we're just saying, so.
Yeah.
Must be at least 5,169.
See, one of our biggest expenses, that we're still paying off the debt on the capping of that transfer station.
Hmm.
Once that debt's gone,
That's a lot of money.
yeah.
And what, give it a year that's gonna,
I don't remember all these things. I was involved in the capping, but that was
20-year?
like 20 years ago. So it could be
Getting
30
close.
years, it could be getting close.
Yeah.
But that only affects the enterprise account on that. It doesn't affect the town's general budget.
So there's a couple of positive things that could be happening to that
Mm-hmm.
area.
So, did we vote on this?
Nope.
Not yet.
Are we going to?
First and second.
When you call it, we will.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So moved. A lot of false starts here.
That was a transfer station one, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Next up
No,
are
Jay.
Water Department articles. First one would be Water Department Enterprise Fiscal 2019 budget, wages of $210,263.07, operating expenses of $168,462, capital outlay of $125,000, debt service of $237,835, for a total of $741,560. And that $721,060 be raised from water enterprise revenues and $20,500 from retained earnings.
I hear a motion to move this forward.
So moved.
Second. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next up, there's a Water Department article for easements for a pumping station on Southampton Easthampton Town Line, which would seek special legislation. This was drafted by Katie Klein at KP Law for the Water Department.
My understanding is we had these articles and passed that to purchase that land last year. Is there some language in that article that,
Yeah, I thought we did an easement, we didn't purchase it, we just.
Well, I think that's for the actual parcel or whatever. However, they found that the possibility exists that they may need an easement to go along with that to actually get the piping to the pumping station. So that's what this is for.
okay. All in favor? Or
I'll make a motion.
I'm getting
Approve it as
punchy.
written.
Or a second?
Second?
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The next one I'll just bring forward from the special town meeting is acceptance of Woodmar Lane as a public way. This was on the special and then got pulled because the highway department didn't have an opportunity to inspect it before the snows came. Randall has inspected and signed off on this now that spring has come.
There a motion?
So move.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Next up is an article for transfer for amortization of the WPAT bonds, $20,401 from the WPAT loan repayment account.
Can you remind me what WPAT is?
Water Pollution Abatement Trust.
Okay.
Thanks, Charlie.
Flop. Motion?
So move.
I'll second it.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous?
Next up would be an article for the transfer of ambulance-related expenses and wages, $100,000 from the ambulance receipts reserved for appropriation account.
I hear a motion?
So move.
Second?
And this is to keep us solvent until June 30th?
No, this would be for, this is for next year.
Fiscal 19, yeah.
But we can only,
I see.
we
yes.
can only take
Take
what
what's there.
what
Yeah.
we've actually received.
Right.
You can't do an estimate, so Vicki is in my estimate of what's available on June 30th to be used for fiscal year 19 is $100,000.
Okay. Got a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous?
Next up would be an article for transfer for PEG programming, $18,877.47 from the PEG programming receipts reserved for appropriation account.
And I don't know what PEG program is.
That's the cable, right?
That's cable, yeah.
Yeah, that's,
It's
I think that's what
cable.
Vicki was talking about before.
Okay.
Debit,
That
credit.
it's a wash.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, basically what that is we get a grant of $50,000 every 5 years from Charter
Mhm.
to operate all this stuff. This is to pay off some of that operation.
Okay.
All right, I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
N is the operating budget, which you voted on earlier tonight. O would be the actual override article to go along with that.
Is that what we'll be voting on next Tuesday?
The article we need to vote tonight.
Okay.
Because
all
it's
right.
also a ballot question, so after going around in about 4 different renditions and getting some advice from KP Law, the ballot question and the article would be very similar to this. We'll read, shall the town of Southampton be allowed to assess an additional $493,163.41 in real estate and personal property taxes for the purposes of funding the following departments and accounts in the operating budget for the town: the elementary school department, police department, fire EMS department, highway department, public library, council on aging, parks commission, street lighting, select board, administration, accounting department, assessors department, treasurer collector department, legal department, town clerk department, telephone, town hall building, emergency management department for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2018. Yes or no? And I will add that I believe now that I will be adding the Board of Health and the building department to that list after what was done tonight.
Motion to accept the article for the election ballot?
So moved.
Second? Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Oh, CPC.
CPC, there are, well, I said 3 or 4 articles, so, first article would be the allocation of the estimates for fiscal year 19, which are administrative expenses of $7,500, and then for the to put into the reserves, and I think I have to reword this to fiscal year 19 instead of 18. In fact, I know I have to do that. From fiscal year 19, estimated revenues for historic resources reserve, $27,000. From fiscal year 19, estimated revenues for community housing reserve, $27,000. From fiscal year 19, estimated revenues for open space reserve, $27,000.
I hear a motion.
I'll make a motion that we allocate those money to reserves for those purposes.
Second.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Did you want to say something?
Unanimous.
I think I ought to speak to a couple of these. So, go ahead. Next.
The next article would be one for $10,000 to the Historical Commission for preserving of Revolutionary War and Civil War graves from community preservation surcharges, historical preservation.
Virginia Ahart, 27 Fulmer Road, Chair of the Community Preservation. This is actually the same one that we voted on at the last special, but they did not receive the grant. So the article was contingent upon receiving the grant, and they would be putting in the 10,000. And now they just would like to go ahead and put in the 10,000. So it
Not
kind of...
contingent on anything. Not contingent on anything.
I'm
just-
not contingent on anything.
I'll make a motion, we include it.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous.
And then transfer $787,595 to the Park Commission to fund the phases of construction of the Labrie Field on Strong Road. Funds to be taken from the Community Preservation Surcharges undesignated account.
I have a very mixed feelings about bringing this when we are cutting everything else. Howsoever, community preservation has also been criticized for not spending the money they have. And the Labrie Field had 5 phases that were to be completed. Phase 1 was completed without the irrigation system. The fields have never grown grass the way they should. Drought, all sorts of things. They are basically very unsafe. Children playing on a field where there's bare ground and then tufts of grass sticking up. At least one organization that has been using the field has pulled out until it gets repaired. This would be the full amount to complete all of the phases. That number may be lowered when we come to the town meeting. I'm not sure by how much. There were several things that were up for, grabs, and then we were supposed to, thought we'd have to fund the Greenway, and we can't fund the Greenway. And Charlie has a better explanation of that than I do. But this is the full amount, and it may be lowered by yeah, 100,000 or more. But we really feel that it's necessary to go ahead and to do all the things and to have a safe field over there. And like I said, I'm having a great deal of trouble taking this forward because I know everybody else is getting cut. I am a member of the school committee here, and I understand the pain that is going on there. But on the other hand, this needs to be done. It should have been done years ago. I don't know how many years ago, how many years since we've been working on the Labrie Field. And yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And community preservation has been sitting there waiting for a proposal to do this. And it's very bad timing, but we really feel we need to go ahead with
This
this.
should bring that park to completion.
That
If
will-
not completion, close enough to say completion.
This full amount would complete the park with a kiddie play area, a field house with bathrooms, which we hear a lot about, and, you know, upgraded fields, the irrigation to maintain it. No, the idea I heard earlier is they were going to ask the fire company to go over and spray it all summer long. Well, I checked it out with Chief Workman, and he said, yeah, we could, but what if there's fires and other things going on? What if we have a drought and brush fires are springing up? He said, you can't count on us. And I said, that's all I wanted to hear. You know, I didn't think it was a good idea, but anyway, I've heard all sorts of things, but we've been waiting for this.
How much do we have left over if we spend this?
If we go this amount, we will have, and that's not counting these funds that are being moved. And I don't think that's next year. I think that's from this year's revenues that Vicki would be moving. We will have still over $100,000 in undesignated and almost that amount in open space recreation.
So total, all CPA money, we have about $1 million?
Oh, we still have money in
A lot in housing, probably.
housing. We have over 300,000 in affordable housing, and I beg people to think about ways we can spend some of that. A couple lots, habitat houses.
Well, I know the Housing Committee worked very hard on trying to identify that, and I think there are possibly some options going forward, but right now, it's a difficult thing
Yeah.
to move forward.
But anyway, yeah, we still have funds. Now, those funds can't be taken. The housing can't be used someplace else. The historical preservation can't be used someplace else.
And this is undesignated because there's not enough in the open space?
Oh,
Why is this in the undesignated?
Because we could split it. Part of it is restoration of recreation, which we can do, if we wanted to split it. If you think that's a good
I just think
idea.
that if it's going to negatively impact historical, and we end up doing something with the old town hall or something, I wouldn't want to deplete an undesignated account in favor of one major initiative.
Well, we wouldn't have enough in the open space recreation.
Yeah.
We would have about 100,000 in that, at the most.
Okay.
And in undesignated, and we'd still have 100, I think it's 109,000 available in the undesignated if we went the full amount.
Another question. Tomorrow night, we're having a focus group on chapter land, as you probably know. So if we go through that and all of a sudden we find 30 acres down the road on whatever street that we don't know about. Could that money be used for that?
Open space, certainly, if we're going to
So-
keep it for that.
So that's the other issue,
Open space recreation,
right?
it would have to be, and basically that's, the undesignated could
Right.
only be used in those spaces.
You mentioned there were 5 steps, and this must be 2 through 5, if only one was done before. If this was, the estimate for this was quite some time ago, are we clear that,
No, this
These-
was done a couple months ago?
okay, so this is a current figure?
What-
And does 2 through 5 have to be done at once?
No, but
a lot of them interrelate to each other.
but they are interrelated, and it,
Water lines and sewer lines for a pavilion, you might as well be doing the irrigation at the same time, especially if you're doing utility work.
Yeah, you could stub some of that up for later use, but
But
Yeah,
the
it-
point is it's cheaper to get a machine out there and set up at one time than it is to.
well, granted.
Can I ask another question? Who oversees the scheduling and, I know the town oversees the mowing and things like that. Who oversees the scheduling and sort of management of the field and
it's
resources?
Park Commission.
It's a park commission,
This is going to the Park Commission.
right?
When our funds come out, we don't manage, community preservation doesn't manage them, somebody else does.
So it's not SYAA, it's our
No.
own park department that
Park
manages when
department.
how the fields get used?
Yeah.
I think I'm with you, it's kind of like,
I know that when I was on SYA, I don't know, I mean, that's why I asked, because I know when I was on SYA, we did a golf tournament for 5 years, and we raised $5,000 a year, and we put in the irrigation that we currently have at Norris School. And so I just wanted to see what other, it's a lot of money to tie into one particular project, even though I know it was a commitment that we made at the beginning of acquiring the land. The other issue for me is, because I've fought this issue at SYAA, at Hampshire Regional, is that there should be gender equity. If you're going to be using a source of field, I would just like assurances that if we're putting that much money into it, that these resources are available to girls as well as boys. So I don't know what fields are there, if it's just baseball, but that's just an important thing to me.
No, there are soccer fields there,
Okay.
and Hampshire United is very heavily the girls' teams.
Good.
And
Okay.
you said it may be $100,000 less, so that's a big variance. So do we have current pricing that lists out the different phases and their cost, or?
yeah,
So where would the $100,000 variance?
no, the 100,000 is still left in undesignated.
No, you said the 787 may be
Oh,
up to 100,000 less.
That if we did not do the batting cage, which it might be good to take that out because there's somebody that might donate that. I couldn't believe it, 72,000 for the batting cages. The little kiddie playground near the field house was about 45. And those would be the things that we had talked about not putting in when we thought
Yeah.
360.
There's like a bubbler out there. I think I sent you guys all an email with
No, I didn't get that.
with the map and everything else
Oh,
about
yeah.
6 months. I bet I did.
Maybe 6 months
I
ago,
don't remember
yeah.
getting that.
It was at least
So
6
we
months
just,
ago
well,
when we were
community
doing these
preservation just
meetings.
spent a lot of money for the playground at Norris, right, for the little ones, right? Wasn't that community preservation funds for that?
The one at Norris was completely funded by
Community
community preservation.
So this amount includes another type of structure at,
It's somewhat like that. They're more, the big plastic things are safer than the old swings and slides. So, and we also funded not the buying of the kiddie playground, that equipment at Conant Park
Yeah.
was actually purchased by the church in memory of the minister's little boy that passed away. But we funded the installation of it.
The timing of this is just unfortunate with, especially the
know.
61 forum. I mean, if this is a source of funds for the town for open space, and I would hate to have a huge amount of money put into an entire phase of the project. It's
Well-
a tough timing.
Yeah, there would be 200, if we took the undesignated, it has to add up at least to 360. If we went back to the smaller amount on that,
60 plus,
that kind of money would still be there because that was the money we had allocated for the Greenway
right.
at our meeting.
And can you explain what she referred to? I mean, I know the answer, but so other people can hear why the money cannot be used for the Greenway purchase?
Because the Greenway actually is not being purchased. The Greenway is actually a lease agreement for 100 years. And because community preservation money is supposed to be utilized for the purchase of property, and this is a 100-year lease. So what's happening with the Greenway is there's discussions at the legislators to allocate money from the state to pay the purchase price of the Greenway, or the lease agreement price. See, we always keep
In
calling it
full, hopefully?
well, that was what we negotiated
Okay.
for, but I can't tell you what's gonna happen.
Right. But this was a recent release or an initiative of the governor, is the Greenway, right? Isn't this in the last month or so?
They call that, what, rail banking, is that what it was?
Actually, the rail banking is the actual contractual agreement relative to the lease. That's been going on for years. That rail banking goes all the way back to when Easthampton put their Greenway in. The funding source that we're looking at was established in 2012 and 2014 for the town of Southampton as a bond in the Commonwealth. This is not new. This is not new. It just is that
Right.
right now we have a agreement of intent to purchase or to lease with the railroad in the town.
Right.
So now, instead of, we saw we couldn't use the CPA money, so that went back to CPA, and we're now looking to have the legislators try to allocate the money for us. This is recent occurrence. We're waiting to see if Senator Humison and the rest of them can move that forward.
Do we anticipate using any community preservation funds in the next 2 years towards anything to do with the Greenway? You're trying to get, no, you were mentioning you were trying to get, what, how much money for the construction of it through the
There is,
federal?
Under the
350 or
federal
something.
transportation.
Right.
Through metropolitan planning, they have allocated a budget for 2019 of $6 million for construction. There is still an open-ended discussion about $670,000 worth of design costs that there is no allocations for. There's a lot of moving parts in that one project that have not been flushed out yet. And if you want an example of just how these greenways evolve, look at Westfield. They don't have the money to build the greenway, but they got the federal money to redo the bridge over the river.
Yeah.
So they're redoing the bridge over the river even though the greenway doesn't connect to the bridge yet. They utilize the money as they can use it.
How did we get these costs, Virginia, 700-something thousand?
The
Park department came out
The
of
park
Montreal.
department, using the different people that they had used originally, we had a wonderful
Yeah, it was a very nice presentation from the consultant.
presentation at the, what is this, March meeting. And with the maps and the costs and
So we're gonna
everything.
have to do a public bid here.
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna ask.
It's gonna be, if you put bathrooms in it, that's construction, so that's a chapter 149, the rest of it's chapter 30.
But,
So
yeah,
it's prevailing wage, all that kicks in, so
but
we're not gonna
he's-
know the true cost until,
No, they built in all of that.
but he really won't know until you go out there and bid it and you get everything back.
No, that's 100% true, but these were figures that were done by, okay, tell me who, Charlie.
Is it the same company that did the East Street
What?
Bridge?
Bill Cannon.
Bill Camp did all that,
using the latest figures he could get.
Yeah, I mean, we've had some bad estimates before, so we don't know what this is gonna be.
Well,
From VHB?
I don't know, is it he from the?
No.
Okay, I don't wanna mention the name, I'm just, okay,
well, that's the best we can do.
no, exactly.
I
won't
mean, you
know.
can't go out to bid on something until you have an idea what you're
Yep.
bidding on or what the cost is.
Gotta-
They gave the Community Preservation Commission a spreadsheet done by a qualified architect
Mhm.
of what the projections were for the phases and what the estimated costs were based on prevailing wages in a bidding structure.
Okay,
That's where these numbers came from.
includes all the design work and all that?
Yeah. Plus a free flagpole.
Don't start.
You mean a free,
There's-
we get a free
I'm arguing a-
flagpole for 795,000?
She's arguing about a flagpole and I'm arguing about a bubbler for the kids that have water. It's like-
No, there's never been a flag or flagpole over there, and it's an Eagle Scout project,
Nice, yeah.
so it will be done.
I mean, personally, I would, because I don't know what's gonna happen at the focus group, what I'm gonna learn tomorrow, I'd like to put this on next week's agenda and just delay it a week before we do anything. Because that's a lot of money that may be used somewhere else, I'm not
It-
sure.
It can't be.
Open space again.
Well, yeah, if you're gonna use that land.
You're assuming something, Matt, that,
No,
I'm not talking about any specific parcel. I'm talking about a parcel that the town may wanna buy to keep as open land.
May I suggest that we put this on the town warrant, so it goes, and we can always modify this at town meeting. That'll be after your forum, and you'll have a better idea of where this is going, because I don't want to see the park department facing a delay of another year because of uncertainty.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I'd rather wait till next week.
I'd actually rather wait too. I feel like I don't have any information about all the different phases.
Yeah,
I'm hearing about
I know I sent it to you.
I'm
I don't know what to tell you. I don't know
looking at
what happened.
a playground and all of these things. I mean, the town is in pretty, I mean, I think there's so many other possibilities for this money.
and I'd like to break down myself of phases 2 through 5 if we can,
right.
Virginia. And if you sent it to us and it's still current, maybe we just resend it.
yeah, I'll be very happy to bring those. I have a few of the extra the design and the costs, and all, but I can also give you the figures of the rest of the money that we have, and,
Virginia, can you put all that sort of together, give it to Ed and let Ed forward it to the whole board,
yeah,
okay?
I can get all that to him.
Come on, Ed.
No, I got plenty of time.
Coffee breaks or something.
Yeah,
Just that we have so many people tugging at the money, we just gotta,
yeah, but the fact is, the only thing we can use it for is affordable housing. We can put some
that
more in.
portion of it, yeah.
Well, the 300
Yeah.
that we've already gotten, we can still take undesignated and put in there. The open space recreation
Right?
is not being touched at this point. We will still have $100 and some thousand in undesignated. We also have an estimate of, and I mean, I know they're estimates, but you got a tax bill due on May 1st. 54,000 there is coming in. It has come in each of the other 3 quarters, so it's going to come in. We don't know what we're getting from the state in November. We know it's going to be much, much less. And please, when you're looking at this, people say, well, it's our tax money. Well, about 60% is your tax money. The other is the state's. And they tell us what we can do with it.
We gotta remember how the state got that money. It's from
Well,
us.
yes, but it didn't come out of our local tax money.
Well, yeah.
Matt, you want to say something?
Yeah.
about that?
Yeah, so Matt Rowland, 16 Mountain Road, I'm in agreement putting it on for next month, or next week, but one of the things I definitely wanna know is what are the other uses for this money? And the reason for that is I get that there's plenty of other projects that we're discussing, one of them being tomorrow night, but if this money can't be used for something like tomorrow night, and it's literally just to preserve open space, and again, this isn't a vacuum because I'm not educated on this at all, but if it's literally just to preserve open space, I think my opinion of it would be that if we don't have an open space in mind that can't be developed, then perhaps it might be better used for the town on a space that is used by a ton of different people in this town, right? I mean, preserving a woods or a field or something like that, while great, we have a space that we just haven't fully invested in and we haven't built out completely. I feel like the money's better spent there. Again, in a vacuum, with perfect information.
Barbara LaFlamme, 20 Cook Road. I had been at a selectmen's meeting earlier this year when we were talking, or the select board was talking about how to preserve the old town hall from increased deterioration. The outside of that building has birds going in. The soffit is very bad condition. So that could be a very good use of some of the undesignated money just to stabilize that building, not for interior design, but just to make it weatherproof, to keep the birds out, to make the building so the bricks aren't falling off, that type of thing. So that could be used undesignated for historic preservation, which is one of the allowed usages. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Marla Hank, Chair, Conservation Commission. I would like to invite you to come to a Conservation Commission anytime there's one Monday specifically, so that you have a little more information about what we do. We have other properties besides those in Chapter 61 that we are interested in, that are contiguous to other open space that have been deemed by Kestrel and other land trusts as important parcels in land, including on the master plan. So certainly, and we know with the price of real estate, $100,000 is the beginning, the curb cut. And obviously, the money needs to go in multiple directions. We appreciate that. But certainly, we are looking at properties, and we would need some funding. And even if you're going for land grants, which we would, of course, do, they don't give you 100% of the cost. You would need the community preservation or another source of funding to offset it. That's just the way it works. But
That's why
yes,
I'd like to
it's
have-
important.
That's why I'd like to have more of a idea of what is step 2, 3, 4, 5, and if something like the building, that's a pretty time-sensitive thing too. Maybe we can come up with a plan over a period of, a couple of years.
I'm just saying there are other more immediate, because once the land is sold and developed, that's it.
Do I hear a motion to hold this until next week's meeting?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Ed?
Okay, and then lastly, there are 2 citizens petitions which have been submitted. The registrars have authenticated that they both have the minimum amount of signatures needed to go on to the town meeting as an article. The first one adds a new section to town meeting bylaw, appropriateness of voter statements at town meetings, and you should have that petition in front of you. And then there's a second one, which is an authorization to acquire for municipal use 51.89 acres formerly owned by Wayne, assessor maps as parcels map 19 parcel 141 and map 19 parcel 144 and map 24 parcel 15 up to $1.2 million, raise, appropriate, or transfer from available funds, accept gifts and grants, and/or borrow up to.
Do I hear a motion to,
We don't need to have a
don't.
motion.
We don't
Point
need
of
to.
order. Robert Floyd, 15 East Street. You can't vote, it's automatic
Yeah.
by the law, citizens petition, and you can't change your
Robert,
wording.
you're not recognized by the chair.
I'm sorry.
We were gonna keep him in
Point of
line.
order.
Yeah, we were gonna keep him in line, Robert.
I had to say that to him, it just made me feel.
But thank you.
All right, so that's on. So now it's open time for the public. Do I need to read this narrative of conduct and protocols? Anyone here would like to address the board?
I would. Hi, Gregory Bennett, 307 College Highway. On the school committee, I'd like to invite everyone from the entire town to come out to the interviews we'll be having Friday at Hampshire Regional High School for the 2 finalists for the superintendent position. It's at 5:30 p.m. and it's in the auditorium. Thank you.
Thank you.
Convy Stahl, Jonathan Judd Circle. I would just like to know what the plan, if there's a plan, to explain the 2.5 override to the public. Are you going to have a detailed sheet indicating some of the things that have been brought up here about some of the problems?
Some of the stuff is in evolution right now.
Okay, so,
That's not the most up-to-date one.
right.
Matt, you want to address that?
So anything like that, yeah, I think is important. I think the other thing I wanted to comment was, you mentioned the lights. I know that's a safety issue, but there may be appropriate places where lights could be cut off that maybe might get the point home to people that, you know, this is a serious situation. I know it's been done, it was done in Easthampton many years ago, and they finally did do an override, so this is just a comment.
It is part of the cut,
Yeah.
actually, isn't it?
What was that?
It is part of the, if they-
Some of it.
$1,000.
$1,000.
Okay.
25.
Okay, all right,
Thank
that's all
you.
I wanted to know, just because I think it's really important that the people know about this.
Yep,
Yes,
thank
yeah.
you.
Matt Rowland, 16 Mountain Road. So thank you for that question. So in fact, we are putting together a one-pager that is itemizing by town service. So the major town services, police, fire, highway, town hall, school, the services that will be majorly affected if an override is not passed. So basically, to pass an override preserves the town services as they stand now. To not pass an override, it's a one-pager of what you basically lose next year. Yep, so it's on there, but yep. So the one-pager will describe all of this, and the hope is to distribute it as much as possible between now and May 1st, and then certainly May 15th.
Now, Matt, from reading the emails back and forth, this is gonna be available tomorrow night?
Yeah, so our plan is to actually put this together at the conclusion of this meeting. We're gonna talk to Vicky, we need the exact dollar amount that, you know, per,
tonight.
we need the finished number, to know like what the override would have, you know, right now, before this meeting, I think it was 71 cents per thousand assessed.
72 now.
Okay, so we need that final number so that, because we're, part of putting it on the back here.
That's what
is
she
we were
gave
gonna-
us earlier tonight.
Yeah, so we needed that, and we just wanted the final budget so that this thing is fully accurate and factually correct rather than
Yep.
making an assumption. So we were gonna work with Vicky tomorrow, finalize it, print it, and then one of us was gonna be there at the meeting tomorrow to at least start distribution of it.
To just make sure, if you don't mind me asking you, Robert, is there any issue with somebody passing
Not
it?
with distribution at a forum, no.
Okay, good, thanks.
Cool, great.
Thanks.
All right.
No, meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, anyone else? Open time to the public? Uh-oh.
Margaret Larson, 9 David Street. So I have some concerns about the money that was just transferred for public safety from operating stabilization. So $100,000, am I correct in that? You know, just as a taxpayer, I have concerns about that money being used to support department expenses rather than emergencies and things that we might need. But I'm also very concerned that it kind of kicks the legs out from underneath the override vote. Consistently over the past, what we've heard when we've talked to people about the override is they'll find the money. I don't need to vote for it, they'll find the money. And I was just talking to a Norris school teacher who said she talked to her friends and said, I'm going to lose my job. Don't worry, they'll find the money. Now, they didn't in her case, and she lost her job. But this is a situation where people will feel that the money will be found, and that it also belies the information on that particular flyer. So that information is no longer correct because, you know, we'll still have some of those services. So then,
Subject to voter approval.
Yeah, it's got to be approved.
right, it has to be approved, but that's, so it's, I think it confuses the clean message of the flyer. And I don't know if Matt has anything to add to that, but that's my 2 cents.
So Matt Rowland, 16 Mountain Road, I'm gonna double down with her, because you're right, it does put it to vote, but the problem is that, you know, it pits people against each other, right? Because one, if somebody only cares about fire and ambulance, then they could be like, well, I can preserve those things and cut everything else, so I vote no for the override and I vote for that, and then that's, you know, $100,000 versus, you know, $400,000 and change. So it does pit services against each other, which is really what we're trying to avoid in this override by having it a one-for-all override. So I'm saddened that I wasn't here while this was taking place, because I was trying to put this together, but frankly speaking, she's right. Like, it does kind of make portions of this inaccurate, and it pits one department against the other, and it basically sends the message that, yeah, we will find the money, which, I mean, I think we all agree in this room that, like, this year, maybe that it was different in years past, but in this year we're at a fork in the road. Like, there's no surplus money left. There's no rainy day fund. There's no free cash. There's no way to prop this up. But by doing something like this with something that clearly should be used for emergencies, like if a hurricane blows over or a tornado comes through or a boiler breaks or something like that, we're basically just trying to prop up a budgetary item with this. I mean, I'm saddened to hear that happened when I wasn't around, but.
Well, I think.
You want to go first?
Sacrificing the ambulance service in this town is not the way to do this. I honestly believe that we should have paramedic service in this town. I mean.
I do too. I do too.
That's paramount. That to me is at the top of the list.
I do
Until
too.
you need it, you don't need it. You know what I mean? When you make that phone call to have a paramedic show up because somebody's in the ground.
Jim, I am totally with you on this. Then why can't you appropriate that money if the override doesn't fail? Why do it like literally right at the same time?
You need to go to town meeting, get
Because it
two-thirds
starts
vote.
July 1st.
Yeah.
How would the ambulance would be done on July 1st, it would be cut at that point.
Yeah.
Because we're talking fiscal year.
The problem is timing here.
Yeah.
If we, let's say.
I'm with you, Jim, but that's what that's what we're fighting for here.
Oh, I want the override, I'm with you on that,
I really don't have an agenda on one service versus the other. I'm totally with you on this. It's a headliner on this form. But you do, please admit that you do cut the legs off of that a little bit. Like, please, I mean.
You can.
Because anybody could argue anything on that page as strongly as you're arguing for paramedic service. And I'm totally with you. You don't need it until you need it. But there's other things on there too that you don't need them until you need them.
Yeah, I'm talking life and death. I mean, you'll see people, I'm sure people will show up at the town meeting and there'll be, we had it at the special, where paramedics were there and you don't understand. When you call.
I do understand. I work in healthcare. This is what I've been working in for 15 years of my life. I do understand it. I'm in operating rooms every single day. That's what I do. So I do understand that, and I'm totally with you on this. What I'm arguing is whether or not we use it as a pit against an a la carte, if you will, on a ballot.
I guess, and I'm going to throw. Yeah. You want to stand?
You gotta come up to the podium or the audience doesn't hear you.
Yeah.
Then they come after me.
In order to do the $100,000, you're saying it's a timing issue. Is it because you have to go to town meeting in order to get it approved? So that's the reason why.
The problem is this, we go to town meeting and we approve the override budget and the non-override budget.
Right, yes.
We basically are waiting for the ballot on May 15th to determine if the override passed.
Okay.
If the override passed, everything is funded and it's fine. But if the override doesn't pass and we go through the other budget, there's no other money that's been allocated at town meeting to support the ambulance service. So therefore, as of July 1, that funding is gone to take those 2 shifts that we have. But if you go to town meeting and you rob the stabilization fund, this is why I kept saying thin ice, you can take and basically support that for that coming year.
But not the years after that.
No, it's thin ice.
You're going another road, you're going another
But
road.
That's right.
That's the Prop 2.5 override too. It's only good for 1 year, and the money could be reallocated. And I think
But
just,
that'll still buffer the town meeting, the town budget.
well, here's.
And you
here's my-
can't call an emergency town meeting afterwards.
Yes, you can.
Oh, sure, you
Okay.
can, yeah.
You can call an emergency town meeting after the fact. I don't remember how many days, but I think it's something like 3 weeks by the time you could do that to make it happen. But yes, you can do that.
So why not
So
do
why
that?
not do
Sounds like we have a mechanism that allows for
One other
that.
thing, we discussed it earlier that you weren't here, Matt.
That's fine.
Let me explain to you that the ambulance generates about 200,000 a year.
I'm totally with you
So
on
if we
that.
cut 2/3 of that away, we're gonna at least lose 100,000.
Sure.
Right.
So not only we're saving 100 by cutting it, but we're gonna lose 100 over here on top of that.
Plus-
So,
And you're
Plus
risking
the-
the rest of the override as a result. Because
What was that again?
and you're risking the rest of the override, that we can have a small part of
But-
things,
but
or we can have
those aren't
everything we
factored
want.
in. Ambulance receipts aren't factored in the budget either.
Well, I guess,
Can't factor in.
just, I mean, from my point of view, the reason I'm supporting it is because the money in the operational stabilization is for emergencies.
Yes.
I can't think of a bigger emergency when the fire truck goes out and the ambulance goes out. That's the biggest emergency there is. And from my point of view, I don't want to risk that the override doesn't pass and we're without an ambulance service, because we can be decertified. To me, this, and I understand where you're coming from. Does it put a little risk on it? Maybe, but we've got to get up there and make the case to the town
I
people.
mean, I'm not trying to fight with.
No, I agree with you,
Especially
yeah.
you, Jim. I'm in full support of wanting and needing the service. I'm just trying to figure out the best angle to actually preserve it.
Well, the
Or
angle
if
you're
you could- Or
saying,
if you could do, or call an emergency town meeting right afterwards and say, okay, it didn't pass,
You can
now we're gonna
call
do
an
that.
emergency town meeting after the town election if the board chooses to do so. It would be in July. There would be a number of weeks that
Why couldn't you
service,
do it in June?
because there may not be enough time. I don't remember what the window
Okay,
is.
okay, I don't,
You know,
I'm
but I
not
think the
trying to be,
window's
yeah.
like 3 weeks, so if we're looking at May 15th, we're probably looking at the end of June to make it happen. And I don't want to even go that route. We did that last summer. We did that with a land transfer where we called an emergency town meeting. The other issue of the emergency town meeting is you have to have 50 people as a quorum
if that passes, yeah.
if that passes. So I'm just throwing out here
Yeah.
things that, you know.
Okay,
But here's, we're not going to settle this tonight.
No, but I do want to say, I want to say one more thing, and Jim, like, just help me understand this, and because I think we feel the same way, just a little bit differently. But if we do this year, what's being proposed, this is going to be a topic of discussion again next year, when we have to pass another override to support it, because it's not a budgeted line item. So I guess my question is, given that this is pulling money out of emergency preparedness funds, basically, to prop this budgetary item up, and we're gonna have to have this same discussion next year about putting it into the budget, why don't we just do it this year? Because it's gonna need another override next year to prop this up again, and so what are you gonna do? You're just gonna keep pulling? I'm asking this question of all of you. You're just gonna keep pulling funds from this until an override passes? You need an override to get this.
You weren't here for the discussion. Part of the discussion was, we've never had a full year of three shifts. It's going to generate, we believe, somewhere above 200,000. We don't know where that's gonna land
Do
yet.
you think it'll
So
pay for itself?
That's what
we
we're,
don't think it'll be quite there, but
Close.
we're not sure. It could be somewhere in the middle, and we wanna see that.
it depends how many people need an ambulance. I hate to say
I'm
that,
just
but,
saying,
yeah.
sacrificing the risk of somebody needing an ambulance and not getting it on time. I'm behind the 2.5 override as much as you. I want to see that happen. I don't want to jeopardize it, but I don't want to jeopardize the ambulance service as well. I think that's paramount to the town. So that's why I'm supporting this.
But wouldn't it be possible to have both those things if there was an emergency town meeting? I guess I'm still not clear on why that couldn't happen very shortly after the vote if for some reason the override didn't pass. I don't know why we can't have both things. Because I agree with you. I absolutely, I support all these things on that flyer.
How
These need to
about
happen.
we have that warrant articles are basically all tabled until next Tuesday for final decision. It's gonna give everybody basically almost a week to reflect on this before the final vote is made.
We've already made motions and seconds.
Yeah, that's all been done.
That's all been done.
But you didn't have
We'd have to go
public
back and
comment
rescind
during
it.
that
Yeah.
part.
You could if you wanted to.
Yeah, if we wanted to, yeah.
Well,
But there was no public comment, correct, during that?
It's
So,
not
so
necessary for public comment when the Board of Selectmen meet.
I'd support, relooking at it next week. Is that what you're suggesting?
That's all. I'm just saying that you've already voted on it. You don't need to open it up next week.
Yeah.
But we're not making a final decision on the warrant until next week anyways.
I mean, I personally think they're done. If we want to take it up again next week, we'll take it up, but I think the motions are there now.
I understand that. I'm not saying that we're nullifying the motions. I'm saying that we can revisit it next week if you want to, because we're gonna be meeting anyways.
Well, we can put it on the agenda.
Well, it's on the agenda. We have to review
Yeah.
the sign the thing, because you have a couple of things like
Right.
community preservation is one,
Yeah.
that still haven't been resolved.
I don't exactly always see it as pitting one department against the other two. Having an emergency service for a town, I think, is something that applies to every single person in town. I feel like everybody at Norris School is my kid, so I feel very strongly about supporting the schools too. Right, right, but I'm just saying that we're basically saying that emergency services, if we don't have emergency service in the town, we're gonna be in a very bad place. And it affects everybody in the town, not just a subset of the town.
Yeah. I mean, we say the schools bring in people,
Police and police, fire.
you probably want to get up that
Okay.
podium.
I'm closing, it's after 9 o'clock. We have a whole slate of other stuff we have to do in executive session. So I'm closing open time right now. Your points are taken.
I just want to say, according to Mass General laws, for holding a special meeting, it has to be no less than 45 days after you declare to have it, or no more than 45 days or no less than 7 days. So there would be an adequate enough window which you get it before the end of the year.
If it's 45 days from May 15th,
45
So
days.
according
from
to,
May 15th,
yeah, so May 15th, you could have it as soon as 7 days after you declare that you need to have a special town meeting, or as long as 45 days.
So
Oh,
45
7
days is the
days.
outset.
7 days is the minimum,
so then,
45
yeah,
is the
then it's a
maximum.
workable.
So it gives you
Okay.
a workable window in which to get
Okay.
that.
I just declared open time, and I gotta get a roll
Okay,
call vote here.
thanks, Charlie.
You got to read going
Thank
into
you, everybody.
executive.
I need a roll call vote to go in, I need a motion to go into executive session.
Do you want to read why?
The executive session is going to be, I'm losing
I know
my
you
voice.
do.
Yeah.
Mass General Law, Chapter 30A,
It's the worst
Section
beer.
21A3, to discuss strategies with respect to litigation in the matter of Reggie Sullivan versus Town of Southampton Select Board, U.S. District Court Number 16 CV 12-023, because the chair has declared that discussion in the matter in open meeting may have a detrimental effect on a litigating position of the town. Mass General Law, Chapter 38, the chair declares on the other one. Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21, Number 3, to discuss strategies with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if any open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and the chair so chair declares. Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, Number 7, to comply with or act under the authority of any general or special law or federal grant in aid requirements, approval of executive session minutes for March 6, 2018. Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, Number 7, to comply with or act under the authority of any general, special law, or federal grant in aid requirements, review the executive session minutes of the Board of Selectmen, and consider the potential release of minutes or any portion thereof for June 13th, 2017, July 11th, 2017, August 22nd, 2017, September 12th, 2017, October 17th, 2017, November 28th, 2017, December 6th, 2017, December 12th, 2017, December 19th, 2017. I need a motion.
I'll make a motion to go into executive session. Groden, aye.
I'll second.
I need a roll call vote.
Roden, aye.
Martin, aye.
Konecki, aye.
Labrie, aye.
I'm declaring a 5-minute recess. God save somebody.